Chapter 468. The Indigo Azure Guard Captain, who was wearing azure blue armor with a few bright silver patterns, was conversing with Duan He. He had been paying attention to the expressions of the two guard envoys. When the Indigo Azure Guard Captain saw the sudden change in the two guard envoys' expressions, he immediately perked up. He focused on the youth who was walking towards the two guard envoys. He was wearing light silver armor and a strange cloud-patterned mask. The Indigo Azure Guard Captain followed the two guard envoys' gaze and fixed it on the white satin brocade box in Wuxia's hands. But no matter how he looked, the Indigo Azure Guard Captain couldn't see anything special about this white satin brocade box. At this moment, Wuxia had already walked in front of the two guard envoys. He directly handed the brocade box in his hand to the two guard envoys. Wuxia thought to himself. He did not know what was inside Lin Yuan's white satin brocade box. If the item in the white satin brocade box isn't useful, I will take off the mask on my face. Revealing my identity as a Radiance 100 sequence member is the best solution to the current situation. Wuxia didn't expect Jian Hanzhong to shamelessly lie in front of the guard envoys and implicate them with the carcinoma Fey. Wuxia didn't know what exactly the sea burial lotus flower was. According to Jian Hanzhong, the abnormality in this sea region should be related to the carcinoma Fey known as the sea burial lotus flower. The spirit guards would usually shelter the carcinoma Feys that appeared in the wild. If a private faction or individual possessed a carcinoma Fey, the spirit guards would also allow it. However, the condition was that the private faction or individual that possessed the carcinoma Fey couldn't use the characteristics of the carcinoma Fey to do bad things. It wasn't a small matter to turn a coastal region into a dead zone outside Indigo Azure City. The two guard envoys of the spirit guards would definitely investigate to the end. Just as Wuxia's mind was spinning rapidly, the two guard envoys of the spirit guard division took the white satin brocade box from Wuxia's hands. Under the illumination of the sun, it emitted a clear moonlight. The two guard envoys opened the brocade box by a small slit. When the two guard envoys saw the item in the brocade box, their expressions became abnormally respectful. They immediately circulated their spiritual power and poured it into the four crests in the brocade box. 3 of the crescent moon patterns on the badges suddenly flashed with a gentle moonlight. The two guard envoys quickly closed the white satin brocade box. They then returned the white satin brocade box to Wuxia and looked at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan did not expect that the Creation Master crest that his master, the Moon Empress, had given him, but he had never used it before, would come in handy now. The white satin brocade box usually had 4 crests. 2 were Class 2 Creation Master crests, while the other 2 were Class 2 Creation Master retainer crests. One of the Class 2 Creation Master insignia was an ordinary Creation Master insignia issued by the Creation Master Association. The 2 Class 2 Creation Master crests Creation Master crests also had crescent patterns on the shield. Lin Yuan was the crescent patterns on the crescent patterns. The 2 Class 2 Creation Master retainer crests were also engraved with crescent patterns at the corners of the shields. However, Lin Yuan didn't tell Wuxia that he was the Moon Empress disciple and the Radiant Moon Palace's young lord. Therefore, Lin Yuan didn't give Wuxia the crescent patterns on the Class 2 Creation Master crest seal. Wuxia usually wore the one that Lin Yuan gave him back in the Xia region. Lin Yuan didn't wear the Class 2 Creation Master crests when he came to the Indigo Azure Sea Market. Therefore, the 4 crests were placed in the white satin brocade box. When he saw the 2 guard envoys looking at him, Lin Yuan quickly cupped his hands again. When Lin Yuan cupped his hands, the 2 guard envoys' mouths couldn't help but twitch violently. They didn't expect to encounter the Moon Empress disciple when they arrived at Indigo Azure City, and were preparing to help Indigo Azure City resist the upcoming spatial rift active period. Furthermore, the Moon Empress disciple actually bowed to the 2 of them. If this news got out. At the thought of this, the 2 Emperor-class guard envoys' eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Their left and right eyelids twitched at the same time, causing their eyes to look rather dry. Lin Yuan said softly, "Lord Guard Envoys, I was intercepted here. It just so happens that I have a way to protect myself. Because of this junior's personal matters, I am truly ashamed to have disturbed Lord Envoy C." As soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, The two guard envoys standing opposite him only wanted to leave this place as quickly as possible. The two guard envoys were able to face even the most powerful dimensional life forms calmly, but they truly did not wish to hear the youth in front of them address them as lords and refer to himself as juniors. Your Excellency, which one is big? You're the one who's doing well. If you call yourself a junior, wouldn't the two of us be of the same generation as the Moon Empress? What a heavenly life! However, when he heard Lin Yuan say that he had been ambushed, he felt a chill run down his spine. The two guard envoys glared daggers at the cold snow pine and its contractor, Jiao Hanzhong, who were still bitterly resisting the heavenly baptism. He had just heard from Indigo Azure City's guard captain that this elder named Jiao Hanzhong was an emperor-class expert from the Zheng family. Was the Zheng clan trying to hang themselves? They actually dared to assassinate the Moon Empress disciple. That was the Moon. Back. Big. Human. Disciple. Brother. Jiao Hanzhong felt a little baffled by the two guard envoys' glares that were as sharp as swords. Could it be that the two guard envoys had seen through the lie that he had just told? That was impossible. Or could it be that when he was commanding the cold snow pine to resist the world cleansing, he had accidentally let out a fart that was heard by the two guard envoys? Old people always had weak stomachs, but he was already very careful. The younger of the two guard envoys said, "Big." Before he could finish his sentence, the younger guard envoys recalled that when the Moon Empress disciple showed them the brocade box, she had asked someone to pass it to them. She hadn't taken out the emblem from the brocade box to show off her identity. This meant that the Moon Empress disciple didn't wish for her identity to be known by anyone other than the two of them. Therefore, the younger guard envoys paused for a moment before speaking after some deliberation. "Do you need the two of us to help you deal with this?" The moment the younger guard envoys spoke, everyone present except for Lin Yuan and the other guard envoys were stunned. This included Listen Lujia, the mother of Bloodbath, and Endless Summer. However, the mother of Bloodbath quickly glanced at Lin Yuan and revealed a faint smile. There was only one possibility for such a reversal. It meant that Lin Yuan had used a strength that he had never used before. This strength was Lin Yuan's identity. The mother of Bloodbath had always felt that Lin Yuan was a little stubborn. But now, it seemed that Lin Yuan wasn't completely stubborn. He just had his own perseverance on the path of his life. The mother of Bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan with eyes full of praise. Lin Yuan was really an outstanding young man. He deserved 100 points. However, the mother of Bloodbath thought for a moment and thought of something. It was a pity that Lin Yuan didn't know how to cook. Minus 150 points, minus 50 points. First, more seeking recommendation votes, monthly votes, and tips. Roar, roar, roar. In the future, updates will be at 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. If you reward me with updates, I'll add an update at 9 p.m. Everyone is welcome to join the Book Friends group on the book's introduction. Everyone can chat in the group. End of this chapter. Chapter 469. Lin Yuan cupped his fists again as the corners of the two guard envoys' mouths twitched and their eyelids twitched. "Thank you, seniors. I can handle this matter myself. I hope that the two seniors can help me keep what I saw today a secret." As Lin Yuan spoke, the suzerain/mythi cold snow pine's world cleansing had reached its final stage, and the feather-like snow had reached its peak. Among them, the slightly older guard envoy watched as the baptism of heaven and earth reached its final stage, and said as large snowflakes fell from the sky, "Don't worry. Snow can make the world more pure, and it can also hide more secrets." Lin Yuan smiled when he heard that. "Seniors, you've gone through a lot of trouble. It's never snow that hides secrets, but humans." After saying that, Lin Yuan looked in the direction of the Indigo Azure City Guard captain, and immediately cupped his hands at the dumbfounded captain. The two guard envoys laughed out loud and said, "There are less than 2 days left in the active period of the dimensional rift. All of you should try not to stay at sea." The few 5-star scholar master scholars have estimated that the dimensional rift's fluctuation this year is the strongest among the 10 active periods of the dimensional rifts in the past century. After speaking, the slightly older guard envoy shook his hand and summoned a silkworm-like fae. The silkworm-like fae wriggled in the air, as though it was using the air as a tree trunk and climbing with satisfaction. Soon, the silkworm-like face spat out a large number of threads and gnawed out the shape of a door in the space. The sparkling silk thread weaved into a crooked doorknob on the door. The slightly older guard envoy directly grabbed the handle of the door and opened the wide spatial door. He then called Indigo Azure City's guard captain over, nodded at Lin Yuan and left. Duan He, who had come back to his senses after chatting with the Indigo Azure City guard captain for a while, was once again stunned. What had happened to this world? I'm a snore who doesn't usually suffer from insomnia and has a good quality of sleep. Why am I having such a twisted and bizarre dream this time? However, right after Duan He regained consciousness, he started to size up Lin Yuan, who was standing in the distance, over and over again. Then he looked at Jiao Hanzhong, who seemed to have aged 10 years after directing the frigid snow pine's baptism of the heavens and earth. Duan He felt his teeth itch as he looked at Jian Hanzhong. Jiao Hanzhong, this old man, is really evil. Originally, he wanted Lin Feng to help the cold snow pine, so that it could successfully reach Myth 2 through the world cleansing. But he had almost dragged himself into the ditch. If it wasn't for the fact that he had been careful, and that it was a taboo for him to participate in a battle between forces, he would have already died. Wouldn't he end up like Jiao Hanzhong? Duan He secretly glanced at the mother of bloodbath and endless summer. Duan He curled his lips without a trace and thought to himself, although they were so beautiful, they were more ruthless than the other. Women were really pig-trotters. However, Duan He soon realized that when he looked at the woman in the pinkish-purple palace dress, he was stunned. The woman in the pinkish-purple palace dress also looked at him and winked at him. His face was filled with kindness and gentleness. Upon seeing this scene, Duan He could not help but think of his mother, who he had remarried at the age of 8 and had never seen again. At that moment, the heavy snow in the sky had stopped. The black hole in the sky did not disappear. Jiao Hanzhong's face was pale and filled with despair. However, the cold snow pine in his hand had already broken through the barrier of Myth I and reached Myth 2. However, because it had just endured the world cleansing and touched the boundary of Myth 2, its body was already completely exhausted. It needed to absorb the world grace that descended after the world cleansing in order to smoothly stabilize its grade. The withered leaves of the cold snow pine, which had been burned by the world cleansing, had all fallen off. Compared to before, the newly grown branches, leaves and pine needles carried a chilly aura. At that moment, the cold snow pine, which had just broken through the threshold of Myth 2, was burning with pale white ice flames. The pale white flames were the ice flames that formed when the extremely cold pine needles came into contact with the air. It made the cold snow pine look like a fire tree potted plant. When a plant type Fey reached Myth 2, it might not be able to transform into a human form like an animal type Fey. But just like Endless Summer, when she was at Myth 2, she could condense a humanoid shadow near her main body. The cold snow pine flew up from Jiao Hanzhong's hand and welcomed the world grace that was about to descend from the black hole in the sky. But at that moment, Endless Summer leaped into the air and grabbed the cold snow pine. With a wave of her hand, the body weaponization bracelet on her wrist emitted pinkish-purple flowers that formed a prison made of flower petals. It firmly imprisoned the cold snow pine, which had just crossed the threshold of Myth 2 and had yet to absorb the world grace, so it was unable to condense a human image. Lin Yuan immediately seized the opportunity to use Morbius' exclusive skill, Pure Land of Bliss. In an instant, the desolate island appeared with a pure white beach. When the world grace landed on the white beach formed by Morbius' exclusive skill, Pure Land of Bliss, it was immediately absorbed by the white beach formed by Pure Land of Bliss. At that moment, the limestone bowl in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone was constantly condensing spirit chi crystals. Due to the excessive amount of spirit chi crystals, a large number of spirit chi crystals quickly overflowed the limestone bowl in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone. A large number of spirit chi crystals overflowed from the limestone bowl and clanked as they fell to the ground. There were even a few spirit chi crystals that rolled to the side of the spirit pool. The sea burial lotus flower, which was at the side of the spirit pool, could feel the massive amount of pure spirit chi from the spirit chi crystals. It instinctively produced the bone lotus flower in an attempt to grab the spirit chi crystals. However, at that moment, the wind-speed rapid antelope, which was acting as the spirit lock spatial zone's housekeeper, used its gold phase strength to conjure a violent storm. It crushed the sea burial lotus flower's bone lotus flower into pieces. Then, he collected the spirit crystals that were scattered on the ground one by one and stacked them neatly beside the small limestone bowl. When Lin Yuan saw the situation, he couldn't help but praise the wind-speed rapid antelope in his heart. At the same time, Lin Yuan thought that since the wind-speed rapid antelope was so sensible, he should give it some rewards in the future. In fact, the best ending for the wind-speed rapid antelope was to find a spirit chi professional with a willpower rune. It could also use a willpower rune to evolve into a fantasy breed for the best choice. However, the wind-speed rapid antelope wasn't a bronze fae, and its potential was limited. Lin Yuan felt that the wind-speed rapid antelope was like a daughter waiting to be married off. However, this obedient and sensible daughter had already become a leftover, and couldn't be married off. For such a daughter that couldn't be married off, Lin Yuan could only nurture her like a wild fae. Finally, he would nurture her into an existence that others wouldn't be able to marry even if they wanted to. The wind-speed rapid antelope, which was doing its job diligently in the spirit lock spatial zone, didn't know that Lord Lin Yuan had already tossed a few huge meat pies to its head. However, these meat pies were tossed too high and hadn't fallen yet. At this moment, the wind-speed rapid antelope's housekeeper job in the spirit lock spatial zone had truly become an iron rice bowl. I forgot to set up the automatic release mode. Sorry. End of this chapter. Chapter 470. All of a sudden, Lin Yuan felt that the world grace in the Pure Land of Bliss had a strong rejection toward the Pure Land of Bliss. It was like a mother suddenly realizing that she had brought the wrong child and fed the wrong milk. The Pure Land of Bliss had only absorbed about 10% of the world grace that the cold snow pine had received after the world cleansing. However, Lin Yuan knew that the Pure Land of Bliss could no longer absorb the world grace that the cold snow pine had bestowed upon it. Lin Yuan wasn't sure if he could absorb all of the world grace. Morbius could only absorb about 10% of the world grace before it could no longer absorb any more. If that was the case, then Morbius' exclusive skill, the Pure Land of Bliss, could absorb the world grace that didn't belong to it. It was 10 times more than what other fays could absorb when they plundered the world grace. The remaining 90% of the cold snow pine's world grace was naturally not going to vanish into the sky. Lin Yuan signaled to Endless Summer with his eyes. Endless Summer removed the petal cage imprisoning the cold snow pine. However, the cold snow pine's mind had already been paused by Endless Summer's enlightenment law rune. The remaining 90% of the worldly grace entered the cold snow pine. Just as the cold snow pine was about to form a human silhouette, a pinkish-purple shooting spear of summer formed in Endless Summer's hand. However, the shooting spear of summer in Endless Summer's hand was much sharper than the one she had used previously. Endless Summer used the shooting spear of summer to pierce through the cold snow pine's trunk just as it was about to form a human silhouette. Endless Summer swiftly plucked out the tree core. Endless Summer followed up with a few consecutive stabs, digging out the law crystal hidden in the cold snow pine's treetop. Endless Summer caressed the cold snow pine's law crystal, and revealed a gentle smile as she spoke to Lin Yuan. Although the law of ice and flame in this cold snow pine's law crystal isn't very pure, it's not that special. However, this Myth 2 law crystal is abnormally complete. Upon hearing Endless Summer's words, Lin Yuan gave her a thumbs up. He felt that Endless Summer and the Mother of Bloodbath were simply too outstanding. Endless Summer's enlightenment law rune had the ability to stop the mind. As long as fays were lower than Endless Summer's grade, Endless Summer could control them before killing them. After the death of a myth breed fae, the law rune turned into a law crystal would be extremely complete. Lin Yuan still remembered the Mother of Bloodbath's proficiency in dissecting the crows. At that time, Lin Yuan almost wanted to change the Mother of Bloodbath's name to the Mother of Butcher. He was simply too skilled. Even more skilled than Fat Otaku pulling paper out of a paper box. The Mother of Bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan and asked softly, "I'll go deal with that old thing." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded without hesitation. A scarlet light flashed. The emperor-level expert of the Zheng family's third bloodline, Jian Hanzhong, had fallen. Lin Yuan breathed in the fresh sea breeze, and the knot in his heart from when he had been ambushed by Cheng Wu was suddenly untied. When Cheng Wu tried to kill him, even if he did his best to resist, he was still toyed with like a mouse. It was at that moment that Lin Yuan realized the importance of strength. Now that he was facing an expert's ambush again, although he was still not strong enough, he could rely on the faction he had personally established, Sky City. However, Sky City was a force that had been established by itself. Even if it had to face 2 Emperor-level combatants, it would not sit still and wait for death. Instead, he could counterattack. Nightmare Vi's appearance let Lin Yuan know that the enemies he had to face were not just the Zheng family's third bloodline. At the same time, there was the Zheng family's main family. When the wind was strong, he had to display his strength of character. When the wind was weak, he had to appear calm. However, regardless of whether he was facing the Zheng family's third bloodline or the Zheng family's main family, Lin Yuan still had the same words. Counter soldiers with arms. When the water comes, block it with earth. When Lin Yuan recalled the battles with Emperor-class experts, he suddenly realized that whether it was the Suzerain/Myth 2 Crow, or the current Jian Hanzhong and Nightmare 6, they all looked like they were here to kill him. But in the end, they had all become delivery boys who had packed up everything that he had. In the end, they had all become delivery boys who had packed up and delivered everything that he had. It was really fate that brought them together from 1,000 miles away, and if not, packed them up from 10,000 miles away. Too generous. The mother of Bloodbath returned to Lin Yuan's side and handed him a diamond face storage box that looked like a pinball pocket watch. Here, this is what that old fellow had. Lin Yuan did not immediately take the face storage box from the mother of Bloodbath. Instead, he lowered his head to look at the mother of Bloodbath's deformed leg. As a myth breed Fae, the mother of Bloodbath's recovery ability was extremely strong. The mother of Bloodbath's leg in its human form had already returned to its normal appearance. However, Lin Yuan knew that the mother of Bloodbath had forcefully taken a blow from Nightmare 6, who was stronger than it. In order to use its blood grasp, its vitality must have been damaged. When Lin Yuan had bought the Blood Brew Grapevine, he had thought of a way to nurture the Blood Brew grapes. The Blood Brew Grapevine absorbed pure flesh energy to produce Blood Brew grapes. It was the same for his contracted Red Thorn. However, apart from using the Mouth of Relinquish to absorb flesh energy, Red Thorn could also store excess flesh energy. The stored flesh energy was the Eye of Relinquish that Red Thorn produced on the surface of the Mouth of Relinquish. The Eye of Relinquish flesh energy was an extremely pure existence. Lin Yuan could not help but wonder if he could use the Eye of Relinquish produced by Red Thorn to nurture the Blood Brew Grapevine. If he could, it would be abnormally easy for the Blood Brew Grapevine to produce Blood Brew grapes. The mother of Bloodbath had the ability, Blood Embrace, and the exclusive skill Spider Desire. It had the ability to increase its strength to Myth 3 in a short time. With Endless Summer's help, it should not be impossible for the mother of Bloodbath to pass the Myth 3 world cleansing. After reaching Myth 3, the mother of Bloodbath could use Body Martial Transformation. He had witnessed Endless Summer's strength after fusing with Body Martial Transformation and entering the Spirit Return state. Lin Yuan finally understood the gap between Myth 2 and 3 for Myth Breed phase. If the mother of Bloodbath could increase its strength to Myth 3, then the top combat power by Lin Yuan's side would increase by a level. Suddenly, Lin Yuan thought of the creation breed above the myth breed that the mother of Bloodbath had mentioned. He had no idea about the creation breed's realm. However, if he could use the Eye of Relinquish produced by Red Thorn to nurture the Blood Brew Grapevine, if he could use the Blood Brew grapes to nurture the mother of Bloodbath, and allow it to break through to the creation breed in a short time, it did not seem impossible. He could also increase the reward for Lemon Week. The automatic transmission seemed to have failed again. Fortunately, he had discovered it. End of this chapter. Chapter 471. The mother of Bloodbath noticed that Lin Yuan was looking at its wound, and its expressionless face revealed a warm smile. The mother of Bloodbath shoved the diamond face storage box from Jian Hanzhong's body into Lin Yuan's hands and said, "Don't worry. Nightmare 6 is not dead, but its mind has been completely destroyed by Big Sister Xia." The mother of Bloodbath saw Lin Yuan's confused expression and explained, You can understand Nightmare VI's current state as what you humans call a vegetative state. The mother of Bloodbath moved its nimble hands and said, I'm going to help Big Sister Xia dissect the cold snow pine. The cold snow pine's pine needles are good stuff. Once I recover to my peak state, I'll dissect Nightmare 6 properly. The frigid snow pine's pine needles are good stuff. I'll split Nightmare 6 up after I've recovered my full strength. The cold snow pine's pine needles were good stuff. When I recover to my peak state, I'll dissect Nightmare 6. Lin Yuan had been focusing half of his attention on the ethereal jellyfish, feeling it constantly digging on the seabed. Based on the ethereal jellyfish's feedback, Lin Yuan knew that it had dug out all the spatial magnets from the seabed. Including the 100 spatial magnets that Lin Yuan had, the ethereal jellyfish had dug out a total of 500 spatial magnets. However, what made Lin Yuan frown was not the huge number of spatial magnets. He realized that the magnetic field formed by the 500 spatial magnets was only the first layer of concealment. Apart from that, there was another layer of concealment that was even more complicated. Compared to the second layer of concealment, the magnetic field formed by the 500 spatial magnets was only an appetizer. The mother of Bloodbath saw that Lin Yuan's brows were knitted together and showed no signs of relaxing. Did something happen? Lin Yuan relaxed his brows and replied, Did something happen? I had the ethereal jellyfish search for spatial magnets at the bottom of the sea and found a total of 500 spatial magnets. However, underneath these 500 spatial magnets, there's a large net covered with spatial soft silver threads. The mother of Bloodbath could not help but ponder upon hearing his words. Who would spend so much effort to set up such a huge project in the sea region, so close to Indigo Azure City? Spatial soft silver could definitely be considered a very precious spirit material. It was one of the few spirit materials that possessed the spatial attribute. The person who set up the spatial magnet and the floating silver thread had obviously set them up here a long time ago. At the very least, it was before the sea burial lotus flower appeared. Otherwise, something as precious as the sea burial lotus flower would have long been taken away by the person who had set up the spatial magnet and floating soft silver. Lin Yuan was also pondering silently. If he hadn't come to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's coastal sea to investigate, and coincidentally discovered the sea burial lotus flower, he wouldn't have been able to find it. He would not have entered the sea and coincidentally encountered a strange spatial fluctuation that could spit out fresh high-grade water world dimensional life forms flesh when he was searching for the sea burial lotus flower. It was also after this strange spatial fluctuation appeared that a strange spatial fluctuation appeared. Only then would Lin Yuan release his contracted spatial source type ethereal jellyfish to carefully investigate that strange spatial fluctuation that had suddenly appeared. Moreover, after the ethereal jellyfish had discovered the first spatial magnet, it had revealed such a secret and complicated concealment method. The mother of Bloodbath pondered for a moment before speaking. Spatial soft silver can perfectly isolate spatial fluctuations and has a wide range of uses. I wonder what exactly is hidden under the net of spatial soft silver thread. Although there are only 2 days before the active phase of the dimensional rift, I think we should tear apart this net of spatial soft silver thread. With me and Big Sister Xia around, even if the dimensional rift is active, nothing will go wrong. The mother of Bloodbath had something in its heart that it didn't say out loud. The appearance of these 500 spatial magnets that weren't produced in the Radiance Federation's continent and were destined to come from other continents was simply too thought-provoking. If it didn't investigate clearly, there might be a huge hidden danger. At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath had a feeling that there should be a huge secret under the net of spatial soft silver thread. When this thought appeared, the mother of Bloodbath immediately shook its head. It tossed this absurd thought out of its mind. As a suzerain/myth 2 Fae, it had always spoken with strength. Since when did it start to believe in a female spider's sixth sense? At that moment, there was a violent fluctuation in the space beside Lin Yuan, and the ethereal jellyfish's captivating red illusory figure appeared within this fluctuation. Immediately after, the ethereal jellyfish's illusory figure turned corporeal and landed on Lin Yuan's neck. Then it extended the 2 thick tentacles in the center of its body and gestured. When the mother of Bloodbath saw this, it suddenly burst out laughing. The captivating red ethereal jellyfish was now hanging on Lin Yuan's neck, with its 2 trembling tentacles. It was as though Lin Yuan had 2 braids on his head that were being blown by the wind. Furthermore, these braids were dyed red, which Endless Summer especially liked to dye. Lin Yuan quickly removed the ethereal jellyfish from his neck in a serious manner. Based on the ethereal jellyfish's consciousness, Lin Yuan knew that the ethereal jellyfish had encountered a problem while cleaning up the spatial soft silver thread. Due to the sea burial lotus flower's wanton extraction of the seabed's energy, the seabed's geological form had changed significantly. As a result, a large portion of the spatial soft silver thread was stuck in the crevices of the seabed's rocks. The ethereal jellyfish relied on its 2 thick tentacles, and was unable to pull the spatial soft silver thread out of the crevices of the seabed's rocks. Therefore, in order to clean up the spatial soft silver thread, the ethereal jellyfish needed someone to help the ethereal jellyfish. Zhou Luo's contracted Fei, the lava dragon lizard, was the most suitable. Lin Yuan immediately gave the order to Zhou Luo, who was standing beside him. Zhou Luo then instructed the lava dragon lizard to dive into the sea and trample on the seabed, destroying the rocks that were pressing down on the spatial soft silver thread. This allowed the ethereal jellyfish to collect the spatial soft silver thread at an extremely high efficiency. Lin Yuan calculated that before the active period of the dimensional rift, which was 2 days, he should be able to collect all the floating silver threads. By then, he would be able to find out what kind of unspeakable things were hidden under such an intricate and complicated setup. As the ethereal jellyfish needed someone to collect the spatial soft silver thread, the ethereal jellyfish needed to be by its side. In addition, the Suzerain/Myth 2 Cold Snow Pine and the Pinnacle Suzerain/Myth 2 Nightmare 6 had yet to be dealt with. Therefore, staying on the deserted island for 2 days was the best choice. During these 2 days, Lin Yuan would be able to take a break from his busy schedule. In his plan to nurture his Iron Bucket sister, the Vajra butterfly and the brilliant Iron Wild Bull could be perfectly connected. It was also the same as the burning sunflower that he had traded for in the Indigo Azure Sea Market. The first was even better. Seeking recommendations and monthly votes. Let's have a prize-winning question and answer session. What was the name of Lin Yuan's first sacred source life form? Guess correctly and enter the book friend group to receive the prize. End of this chapter. Chapter 472. South of Hoothfire City, Scorching Volcano Region. Here, even in winter, the temperature remained above 40 degrees all year round. In the summer, the temperature could reach around 55 degrees Celsius. It could be said that the temperature south of Furnace City was comparable to the temperature in the Class 2 Abyss Dimensional Rift. However, the vegetation in Furnace City's scorching volcano region was much more abundant than in the Class 2 Abyss Dimensional Rift. Many plants that loved high temperatures grew luxuriantly here. Due to the active fire elements in the scorching volcanic region, most of the plant type phase would be able to absorb the spirit chi from the earth as magma flowed out of the volcanic crater. As a result, the concentration of spirit chi here was much higher than in other places. As a result, many of the wood attribute plant phase in other regions had mutated after several years in the scorching volcanic area. Slowly, it became a wood type and fire type dual attribute phase. These wood type and fire type plant phase became a specialty of Fireforge City. Beside the huge ochre-colored rock was a young girl wearing the Redbud Intermediate Spirit Chi Academy's uniform. He commanded a pure black raging bull, with a metallic luster to charge through a group of silver-ranked fire-spotted jackals. This group of silver fire-spotted jackals had brown fur all over their bodies, but compared to other wolf species phase, the brown fur appeared much more messy and thin. After all, in such a high-temperature environment, the thick fur would be a huge burden for most phase. It was just that these seemingly thin and messy brown fur had patches of scarlet fire spots on them. Fire elements were faintly emitting from the scarlet fiery spots. Suddenly, a firespot jackal leader that was much larger than the other firespot jackals let out a sharp howl. Apart from one of the fire-spotted jackals that had been pierced by the metal sword horn that suddenly appeared on the head of the black mad bull, the other fire-spotted jackals were all dead. The scarlet spots on the bodies of the other silver-tier firespot jackals suddenly lit up. Blazing reddish-brown flames shot out from the mouths of these silver-ranked fire-spotted jackals. The scorching flames instantly swept towards the black raging bull. The young girl in the Redbud Intermediate Spirit Chi Academy's uniform was none other than Chu Ci. The obsidian iron wild bull was about to be hit. Not only was Chu Ci not worried, but her eyes lit up instead. Obsidian iron wild bull, use pain buffer. Following Chu Ci's command, the obsidian iron wild bull's black body suddenly shone with a dazzling light. It had turned into the legendary colorful black. The fire attacks of the dozen or so fire-spotted jackals landed on the obsidian iron wild bull. When the flames landed on the obsidian iron wild bull, they did not roast it. Instead, it was as if the obsidian iron wild bull's glowing skin had isolated it. The attacks of a dozen or so fire-spotted jackals caused the ground around the obsidian iron wild bull to sizzle under the high temperature. However, the obsidian iron wild bull seemed completely unaffected by the heat of the flames on its body. Like a flaming bull wrapped in raging flames, it charged towards the dozen or so firespot jackals that had just spat out flames, and the scarlet spots on their bodies had dimmed. The pack of firespot bearded wolves, who thought they could kill their target, panicked. Under the fierce charge of the obsidian iron wild bull, only the leader of the firespot bearded wolves had yet to fall. Seeing that things were not going well, the leader of the firespot bearded wolves immediately fled into the distance, ignoring its broken hind leg. The leader of the firespot bearded wolves was obviously scared out of its wits. At that moment, the mighty obsidian iron wild bull suddenly let out a sorrowful cry. As the dazzling light on the obsidian iron wild bull's body disappeared, the flames began to rapidly burn its body. However, at the same time, green spots of light filled with vitality appeared on the obsidian iron wild bull's body. Standing in the distance, Chu Ci's face was full of worry and heartache. The Vajra butterfly on Chu Ci's shoulder fluttered its wings in satisfaction. At that moment, a pair of slender, fair hands that looked like they were carved from cold jade landed on Chu Ci's shoulder and patted it twice. A woman with a frosty expression and an aura that seemed to be eternally cold said to Chu Ci in a gentle voice, "Don't worry. Don't worry. Your obsidian iron wild bull evolved from a bronze/fantasy breed to a silver. With the exclusive skill, pain absorption, you can deal with such injuries. Moreover, the obsidian iron wild bulls have been fed metal spirit materials for a long time, and are often tempered by this level of fire energy. It can greatly strengthen the obsidian iron wild bull's bodies." When Chu Ci heard this, the worry on her face lessened. However, her heart ached for the obsidian iron wild bull. Chu Ci said to the woman whose face was as cold as ice, "Aunt Song, the obsidian iron wild bull has reached silver V/fantasy I. I think my combat ability has also increased, and there won't be any big improvements in a short period of time. We can go back now." When Song Yu heard this, she turned to look at Chu Ci. The more she looked at this young girl, the more she admired her. In the beginning, he had only come to Redbud City because of Lin Yuan's request and the Moon Empress instructions. When Lin Yuan became the Moon Empress disciple, Cold Moon had already accepted him wholeheartedly. However, to Chu Ci, it was only because of her relationship with Lin Yuan that she loved him. After interacting with her, Song Yu found that this girl, who looked soft, was unusually determined. As long as she made a decision, she would put in much more effort than ordinary people. She was so tenacious that she did not seem like a 15-year-old girl at all. Song Yu had originally planned to take Chu Ci out to train during the holidays. However, Song Yu found that she only played the role of a guardian during Chu Ci's training. Everything else, including wilderness survival, Chu Ci took care of herself in an orderly manner. At the same time, he would also prepare his share. This reminded Song Yu of when she had first seen Lin Yuan's information and Chu Ci's information. The siblings supported each other and grew very upright in the wind and rain, but it was also very heart-wrenching. As she spoke, Song Yu reached out and gently pressed down the 2 strands of hair on Chu Ci's head. She then asked, "Do you miss Big Brother?" Chu Ci did not hide her emotions and nodded graciously. "Lin Yuan and I haven't seen each other for more than 4 months. I miss him." Song Yu could not help but feel warmth in her heart. Song Yu could feel the strong sibling affection in Chu Ci's words for Lin Yuan. It was sincere and warm. Second, seeking recommendations, seeking monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 473. The huge ball of flames on the obsidian iron wild bull's body had completely dissipated. Although the obsidian iron wild bull had survived, its entire body was charred black. It had obviously suffered serious injuries. The obsidian iron wild bull stood there, panting. Its eyes suddenly turned crimson as it looked at the fleeing firespot wolves. A powerful spiritual shock shot out from the obsidian iron wild bull's eyes toward the firespot wolves. The head of the fleeing firespot bearded wolf exploded, and it fell lifelessly onto the maroon ground. Cold Moon could not help but exclaim in admiration. The obsidian iron wild bull might only have silver V/fantasy eye strength now, but its annihilation gaze attack power can reach the level of a gold/fantasy breed after taking enough damage. Amazing! Any expert who knew Cold Moon would be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. Cold Moon was famous for her arrogance. She would not say anything against her will even in front of the Moon Empress. It was clear that Cold Moon admired the obsidian iron wild bull. Cold Moon could not help but be curious. Where did Lin Yuan get such a treasure for Chu Ci? It was tough, sturdy, and strong. It also had a strong output and defensive ability. The obsidian iron wild bull's elite skill, Sacrifice, had greatly increased Chu Ci's strength after the obsidian iron wild bull's growth. Among all fantasy breed phase in the world, talent, potential, bloodline, abilities, exclusive skills, and even attributes countered each other. This resulted in a huge difference in strength. Among all the fantasy breed phase, how many of them could deal damage that was a major grade higher than themselves? Moreover, the obsidian iron wild bull's exclusive skill, Pain Absorption, gave the annihilation gaze more possibilities. Pain Buffer, which the obsidian iron wild bull had comprehended at silver, might still take damage in the end. However, during the buffer, the obsidian iron wild bull could completely use the strength of the damage it took. Combined with the iron horn skill, it would deal damage to the target and stacked with its own attack power. No matter how one looked at it, the obsidian iron wild bull did not look like a defense-type fae. The defense-type obsidian iron wild bull's ability, Suffering Buffer, was indeed a defensive ability. It also had the appearance of a defensive skill. However, the combination of Pain Buffer and obsidian iron wild bull didn't feel right no matter how he looked at it. Especially under their first command, Song Yu felt that they were extremely reckless. He had gone to the heavens. Chu Ci smiled brightly when she heard Song Yu's praise. Lin Yuan gave me this obsidian iron wild bull, Song Yu said after sensing Chu Ci's pride and happiness. Since we're in the scorching volcano area, why don't I go dig out some radiant ore for your obsidian iron wild bull? Let's see if you can raise your obsidian iron wild bull's quality from fantasy eye to fantasy eye. Then, Song Yu explained. The radiant ore is only effective if it's just dug out from the scorching volcano. After it cools down, the brilliant stone will turn into an brilliant stone, and it will no longer have the ability to raise the fantasy breed obsidian iron wild bull's quality. I'll collect brilliant stones and upgrade them. It'll take about 2 days. We can go back in 2 days. When Chu Ci heard Song Yu's words, she knew that this was a rare opportunity. If she did not go to the scorching volcano to obtain brilliant stones, she would have to come to Furnace City again. At the same time, Chu Ci had some doubts. Using spiritual ingredients to enhance a fantasy breed phase quality required the ability of a creation master. Apart from specific spiritual ingredients, the enhancement of a fantasy breed phase quality also required the assistance of pure spirit qi. Only a creation master could produce pure spirit qi. Could Aunt Song be a creation master as well? When Song Yu saw the curiosity in Chu Ci's eyes, her usually frosty face revealed a gentle smile. Song Yu, who had never been patient with others, was unusually patient with Chu Ci. Yes, Aunt Song is a creation master. Can Chu Ci be your disciple? As Song Yu spoke, her face suddenly blushed. However, Song Yu's expression tensed up unnaturally. It looked even colder. Song Yu was a little embarrassed. How could she have accidentally said what was on her mind? For a person who was not good at expressing his feelings. After revealing his emotions, He felt as nervous as a person who was afraid of heights who had been on a roller coaster for 3 days straight. Song Yu didn't expect that she would be so nervous right after she finished speaking. A warm smile appeared on Chu Si's face, but her expression was unusually serious as she spoke to him. "Hello, master." Hearing this, Song Yu was stunned. He had not revealed his identity in front of Chu Si, nor had he displayed his abilities as a pinnacle class 4 creation master. Even when he had fought in front of Chu Si previously, he had merely used his platinum strength to scare away a few prairie fire cheetahs. Under such circumstances, Chu Si had agreed to become his disciple without a second thought. At this moment, Cold Moon suddenly understood why the Moon Empress had accepted Lin Yuan as her disciple. It was as if he had changed into a different person. He actually thought of cooking personally. Right now, Song Yu didn't even need to talk about cooking. Even if Song Yue was asked to make a wok, she would be more than willing. Song Yu asked Chu Si in a gentle voice. "Why?" Chu Si's eyes sparkled. "Because Aunt Song is the person in this world who is the most like family apart from Big Brother." Song Yu lowered her head and didn't speak for a long time. When Song Yu raised her head again, her eyes had the same starlight as Chu Si's. At the scorching volcano's crater, Song Yu waved her hand. In an instant, apart from the lava flowing out of the crater of the scorching volcano, which could still emit scorching heat, there was nothing left. The entire scorching volcano was covered in a layer of bone-chilling frost. The frost was filled with Absolute Zero's ice will. A 100-meter-long giant dragon appeared in the sky. It didn't roar after being summoned, but it was silent and filled with the absolute pressure unique to Imperial Dragon species phase. Song Yu said to the giant dragon in the sky, "Iced Songhuang Dragon, guard my precious disciple for me." "Iced Songhuang Dragon, guard my precious disciple for me." Upon hearing Song Yu's words, the 100-meter-long iced Songhuang dragon in the sky was clearly stunned for a moment. Then, the 100-meter-long dragon coiled up and turned into a youth in an icy blue robe. The youth had blue hair, blue eyes, and was abnormally handsome. Although he looked like a youth, his facial features were roughly 50% similar to Song Yu's. Then, Song Yu soared into the sky and dove toward the scorching volcano's crater. At that moment, Song Yu suddenly thought, "The Moon Empress and I both have disciples. Doesn't that mean that only Mystic Moon doesn't have a disciple?" At that thought, Song Yu felt that she should go back and have a good chat with Mystic Moon about the wonderful feeling of having a precious disciple. Masters. Seeking monthly votes. Sob sob, sob. Tomorrow I'll go to the hospital to change the wound dressing. It's too difficult to deal with. For the next few days, there will be 2 updates every day. On the 15th, there will be explosive updates. End of this chapter. Chapter 474. Lin Yuan, who was on the deserted island, suddenly felt a little melancholic as he held the 2 crystals that were only the size of a fingernail. It was such a waste to not have any use for such a good item. Lin Yuan first picked up the slightly smaller crystal that was white with a hint of light blue. There seemed to be an ice flame dancing inside the crystal, which was white and had a hint of blue in it. As the ice flame danced, there seemed to be ice crystals constantly condensing and dissipating inside the crystal. The ice flame was dancing passionately, but there was an indescribable chill in it. On this crystal that was white with a hint of blue, there were 2 indistinct golden marks that indicated the crystal's identity. Endless Summer, who was handling the cold snow pine with the Mother of Bloodbath, saw Lin Yuan's melancholic expression as he looked at the ice flame law crystal. Endless Summer could not help but say, "Lin Yuan, the ice flame law crystal might contain laws, but it's a very unorthodox existence among the ice-type laws. However, the ice flame law also contains a trace of fire. It's a top-notch item for an ice-type and fire-type myth-breed fae." Endless Summer could not help but smack her lips. She had grasped the Enlightenment Law. It had nothing to do with the ice flame law crystal of the cold snow pine, or the dead dream law crystal of the dream-eating bat. Otherwise, he could really take the law crystal that had the same origin as the law he grasped and assimilate it to strengthen the Enlightenment Law power he grasped. Although the distance between a mythical breed and a creation breed looked like the distance between a fantasy breed and a mythical breed, it was only a huge transformation away. However, the distance between myth breeds and creation breeds was much greater than the distance between fantasy breeds and myth breeds. The transformation from fantasy breeds to myth breeds required the world cleansing, and there was a slim chance of survival. Many Fays would only become myth breeds after evolving from Fantasy V to Suzerain, and when they reached Myth I, even if they were at full strength, when they evolved into myth breeds, they would turn into ashes. However, when fantasy breeds evolved into myth breeds, they could still seek help from others to resist the world cleansing and increase their chances of surviving it. However, if myth breeds wanted to evolve into creation breeds, they would need to constantly strengthen their law runes and make the law runes' power strong enough. It was so powerful that it could use a single type of rule force to open up a pure rule world formed by a single rule force. Not to mention the creation tribulation that one had to go through to become a creation seed, which was more than 100 times more dangerous than the world cleansing. Even for the accumulation of rule force, it was unknown how much energy was needed to temper the rule force. He had spent countless years of effort on the Myth 3 Fae. In this world, the most honorable thing about Class 5 Creation Masters was that they could pay a price to draw out a portion of the Law Crystal's power of law. Then, he would use the law power guided by the law crystals to concoct pure law energy that could be absorbed by any law rune. However, even if Class 5 Creation Masters had such abilities, they would mostly use them to enhance their contracted phase and source-type lifeforms. Why would he bestow such a precious thing to others? At that moment, the Mother of Bloodbath was rapidly peeling the cold snow pine's bark with its hands. The Mother of Bloodbath also took out a crystal bottle and squeezed the juice from the cold snow pine's branch, which was already the size of a potted plant. Upon hearing Endless Summer's words, the Mother of Bloodbath also raised its head and said to Lin Yuan, "Don't worry. Although the law crystals of the cold snow pine aren't considered outstanding, the tree sap of the cold snow pine is still good stuff. If you still have the heavenly maiden grade fire attributed elemental pearls you took out earlier, you can use the pure fire elemental energy within them to roast the sap of the cold snow pine. At that time, the sap of the frigid snow pine will be burned into rosin. But when I'm calcining the cold snow pine sap, I need to use the pure fire elemental energy from a heavenly maiden grade pearl. If the fire elemental energy used to calcine the sap isn't pure enough, then the sap won't turn into rosin, but incense. The frigid snow pine's rosin can heal wounded souls. However, the frigid snow pine's incense doesn't have much of an effect on the soul. It can only heal the injured mind." As it spoke, the Mother of Bloodbath's expression was abnormally solemn. The Mother of Bloodbath valued the cold snow pine's tree sap much more than the law crystals of the cold snow pine. Lin Yuan's expression froze slightly when he heard the Mother of Bloodbath's words. He didn't expect the cold snow pine's sap to have such an effect after being turned into rosin. He had heard from his master, the Moon Empress, that anything that could heal the soul was considered an extremely valuable strategic resource. Many spiritual ingredients and phase could do so when it came to the mental aspect. However, there were very few that could truly touch upon the soul. Lin Yuan carefully noted down the Mother of Bloodbath's words. However, when it came to pure fire elemental energy, even the fire elemental energy within the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls was not as pure as the life-form silent fire produced by the twin red pagoda's main flower. Lin Yuan asked, "If I use the life-form silent fire to burn the cold snow pine's tree sap, will there be a better effect?" The Mother of Bloodbath said with certainty, "Of course. Using the life-form silent fire to burn the cold snow pine's broken branches can preserve the cold snow pine's tree sap to the greatest extent. It will even bestow upon the rosin produced by the cold snow pine's sap a huge amount of vitality. The rosin produced by the life-form silent fire will be several times stronger than the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls." Upon hearing the words life-form silent fire, Endless Summer gently placed her hand on her chest. The life-form silent fire that Lin Yuan had given to her to save her had already become a tree core in her body. After that, Endless Summer had fused the tree core that she had dug out into her body. Now, Endless Summer had 2 tree cores in her body. The tree growing 2 hearts could be considered a great opportunity and transformation. In Endless Summer's opinion, It was already a great opportunity for Lin Yuan to have one of the life form silent fire. Now that Lin Yuan did not have the life form silent fire to burn the cold snow pine's tree sap, Endless Summer felt a little embarrassed. A deep sense of gratitude once again spread in Endless Summer's heart. However, Lin Yuan was secretly calculating in his heart. If he used the life form silent fire to burn the cold snow pine, the effect would be better. He could wait for the twin red pagoda's main flower to produce the life form silent fire in the spirit lock spatial zone to mature. Then he could use the mature life form silent fire to burn the cold snow pine's tree sap into rosin. Zhou Luo, who was commanding the lava dragon lizard not far away, heard the conversation between Lin Yuan, the mother of Bloodbath, and Endless Summer. He suddenly felt that his masters were simply too cruel. However, the mother of Bloodbath's master had previously said that he wanted to build a disco on this deserted island. How many floors would it be built at that time? The deserted island's scenery was so good. They could totally build a big theater in addition to the disco. At that time, it seemed like he could play the Swana again, which he had not played for a few years. Second, seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 475. Lin Yuan looked at the slightly larger grayish-black Dead Dream Law crystal in his hand. It also had 2 golden carvings. The Dead Dream Law crystal seemed to be shrouded in a layer of illusory dreamland. There was a strange feeling in the hazy dream, and the happiness was filled with the taste of pain. Lin Yuan shook his hand and took out another law crystal that he had obtained in the depths of the endless forest. The Night Death Law crystal that he had obtained from the Night Calamity Crow. Lin Yuan suddenly realized that he seemed to be fated with Dark-type phase. Among the 3 law crystals in his hand, 2 of them came from Dark-type Mythbreed phase. However, when comparing the 2 law crystals in the bodies of these 2 Dark-type Mythbreed phase, the Dead Dream Law crystal from the Dream-Eating Bat was obviously not as good as the Night Death Law crystal from the Night Calamity Crow. Whether it was in terms of the laws contained in the law crystal, or the completeness of the law crystal, it was all thanks to the Night Death Law crystal on the Nightbane Raven's body. It was probably because the Dream-Eating Bat had used its exclusive skill, Night Sacrifice. As a result, the Dead Dream Law crystal was still in a complete state, and did not shatter. However, the Dead Dream Law crystal was obviously much dimmer than the Night Death Law crystal. As he fiddled with the 3 law crystals in his hand, Lin Yuan felt that his melancholy had become even stronger. Something like the law crystals could not be traded no matter what. Therefore, these 3 law crystals were destined to remain in Lin Yuan's hands. However, Lin Yuan could not use the law crystals at the moment. Even Endless Summer and the Mother of Bloodbath, the 2 Mythbreed phase, could not absorb them due to their different laws. It had to be said that having a strong foundation was sometimes a kind of sweet distress. If the core members of the other veteran factions knew what Lin Yuan was thinking, they would definitely come over and give him 2 big slaps. Then they would shout at Lin Yuan, "Wake up, you idiot! Ants are running for 10 years. How was this sweet distress?" It was clearly sweet happiness. Wuxia was tearing up another silver protein silkworm chrysalis and feeding it to the insect queen. Wuxia, who only had 1 contracted life form, was used to replenishing the insect queen's energy to the maximum no matter what. As long as the battle ended, he had to replenish the insect queen's energy to the maximum, in order to deal with the unexpected situation that could happen at any time. After feeding the insect queen, Wuxia looked up at the sky and said, "It's getting late. Since we'll be on this deserted island for the next 2 days, why don't I go to Indigo Azure City to buy some tents and set up a temporary camp here? Then at night, I'll find some metal spirit materials to make iron plates and barbecue some seafood." Upon hearing his words, the Mother of Bloodbath's eyes lit up. However, the Mother of Bloodbath was in no hurry to be the first to speak. Upon hearing Wuxia's suggestion, Lin Yuan waved his hand and took out many tents from his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box, which could be set up and assembled at any time. These tents had been stuffed in when you had helped Lin Yuan pack up the face storage box as a precaution. However, he had never had the chance to use it for such a long time. Now it could finally be put to good use. Then, the Mother of Bloodbath saw Lin Yuan take out some fruits from the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. The sharp-eyed mother of Bloodbath immediately noticed a bag of instant rations among the fruits. The mother of Bloodbath immediately stood up and raised its hand. I agree with Lu Jia's suggestion. I'll let Big Sister Xia separate the spiritual ingredients from the cold snow pine on the island. Lu Jia and I will go to Indigo Azure City's seafood market to take a look. I heard from Star Web that the cartilage tiger grouper is especially delicious when grilled. The mother of Bloodbath felt that Lin Yuan was simply a devil. He was the heroic spider that had just been gloriously injured. How could he give him instant rations and fruits? He must be served with grilled seafood. When Lin Yuan heard the mother of Bloodbath mention the cartilage tiger grouper, his eyelids immediately twitched. Which got on Star Web dares to say that the cartilage tiger grouper is delicious when grilled. Could it be that they used a high-grade strange flame to grill the cartilage tiger grouper? A young cartilage tiger grouper was over 4 meters long. An adult cartilage tiger grouper could even grow to nearly 18 meters long. Such a large fish would not be finished even if it was grilled until next month. However, Lin Yuan still agreed with the mother of Bloodbath and Lu Jia's suggestion. When Lin Yuan heard Lu Jia mention the grilled seafood, his stomach, which had not felt anything, suddenly became hungry. Lu Jia's grilled seafood was also a must. Since Lu Jia knew how to cook too many things, every one of them was delicious. Thus, Lin Yuan had not eaten grilled seafood more than a few times. Suddenly, Lin Yuan felt the mother of Bloodbath look at him with a kind of, "Are you human? Aren't you hungry?" expression. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a little puzzled. However, when he saw that there was a bag of instant rations mixed with the fruits, Lin Yuan hurriedly bent down and silently picked up the bag of instant rations before storing them in the Fey storage box. Oh my god! It seemed like the mother of Bloodbath, who was number one in eating, had really misunderstood. Lin Yuan had only taken out the fruits so that he could squeeze some juice while eating the grilled seafood. He had not expected a bag of instant rations to fall out. Listen felt that he could not hold back the corners of his mouth. Just as he was about to burst out laughing, he hurriedly said, "Indigo Azure City has a lot of specialty seafood that other places don't have. Indigo Azure City has a lot of specialty seafood that other places don't have. Some of the shrimps and shellfish are especially suitable for charcoal grilling. I'm more familiar with this place, so I can lead the way. I'll also buy some miscellaneous supplies that we need for these 2 days." After the mother of Bloodbath, Listen, and Lu Jia left, Lin Yuan immediately rolled up his sleeves and started squeezing the juice. When squeezing the juice, Lin Yuan made specific fruit combinations according to everyone's favorite taste. He did not know Zhou Luo's taste. Therefore, Lin Yuan made a little more of each type of fruit juice. No matter what Zhou Luo liked to drink, he would be able to get it. After squeezing the juice, Lin Yuan put the juice in a crystal bottle. Then he placed the crystal bottle in the cold seawater to maintain the juice's cool taste. Late at night, the mother of Bloodbath, Endless Summer, Lin Yuan, Listen, and Zhou Luo were all full. Even Zhou Luo's lava dragon lizard was given a few roasted fish. However, even if Lu Jia was a man made of iron, he could resist the insect tide for half an hour in Cold Frost City alone. Now he was so tired that he could not even lift his shoulders. Lu Jia only had one thought in his mind. Fortunately, when you did not come. Otherwise he would have to roast at least 2 more fish, 5 crabs, 30 shrimp skewers, a bag of shellfish, and who knew how many big squid. First, I'm looking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Welcome to the Book Friends group to chat. End of this chapter. Chapter 476. After eating and drinking their fill, everyone began to rest in the camp that was set up early in the morning. Zhou Luo summoned the dark snake Japalura, which he had just formed a contract with not too long ago, to keep him company during the night on the island. On the other hand, the lava dragon lizard continued to help the ethereal jellyfish shatter the rocks at the bottom of the sea and collect the floating silver threads hidden under the seabed. Not long after, a deafening snoring sound came from Lu Jia's tent. Clearly, Lu Jia was exhausted. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer continued to split the cold snow pine. It had to be said that the mother of Bloodbath was a professional when it came to dismantling spiritual materials. The cold snow pine was almost done dissecting, But the mother of Bloodbath had not left a single dregs. The mother of Bloodbath had even turned the cold snow pine's bark into hemp silk. It planned to bring it back for when you to make something for Lin Yuan. Listen took advantage of the moonlight to train the Pain Illusory Fox and the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox. By directing the Pain Illusory Fox and the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox to fight, Listen strengthened their combat skills and tacit understanding. As he watched, he realized that Listen was commanding the Pain Illusory Fox and the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox to fight. He had his own unique understanding of combat techniques. He had enhanced the Silver 7/Fantasy I Pain Illusory Fox. The Pain Illusory Fox was considered rather outstanding among spiritual-type fays. The Illusory Pain Fox used pain as a medium to control and damage its target. It could be said that it was a combat style that took into account both control and output in an invisible and intangible manner. Of course, compared to the Silver 7/Fantasy I Pain Illusory Fox, the Silver 3/Fantasy I Three-Tailed Crimson Fox's aptitude was better. At the same time, in terms of skill combinations, the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox could work well with Listen's Pain Illusion Fox. The Three-Tailed Crimson Fox's 3 large and fluffy tails were always burning with red fox fire, making it look like a fire tribute fae. However, the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox was a spiritual type fae through and through. The Leaping Foxfire was an exclusive skill of the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox. Every foxfire that hit the target could continuously weaken the target's mental state and resistance. As a result, all of the Pain Illusory Fox and Three-Tailed Crimson Fox's spiritual type skills, be it damage or control effects, would be multiplied. At the same time, the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox also possessed a powerful single-target control skill called Charm. In a one-on-one duel, every Spirit Chi professional would have multiple phases. If you wanted to win in a duel, you needed to have the ability to kill your opponent. Thus, the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox, who had extremely strong control abilities, did not perform too well in a duel. However, in the team competition, the Three-Tailed Crimson Fox's powerful single-target control ability could control the enemy team's core fae very well. It could play a crucial role at a crucial moment. When Listen, who was training, saw Lin Yuan walking toward him, he immediately stopped the Pain Illusory Fox and Three-Tailed Crimson Fox from fighting. The Three-Tailed Crimson Fox stopped fighting and laid down beside Listen's legs, curling up on the ground lazily. Its 3 fluffy tails gently stroked Listen's trousers, looking very pleased. The Pain Illusory Fox called out softly to Listen, who nodded. The snow-white Pain Illusory Fox ran to Lin Yuan in a few steps and placed its small paw on his leg. It stepped on him twice as a greeting. Then he turned around and returned to Listen's side. Clearly, the Pain Illusory Fox still remembered that Lin Yuan had promoted its grade and quality. Listen hurriedly asked, thinking that Lin Yuan had come over because he had some instructions. "Young master, is Brother Zhou looking for help in the sea?" Lin Yuan shook his head and reached out to touch the hair on the back of his head. "Listen, I think your age and strength are suitable. Do you have any plans to join a club-like guild to compete in the S tournament?" Lin Yuan remembered that when Listen had talked about his Star Web achievements, it seemed like he had only reached the 10th floor of the Star Tower. Given Listen's strength, it shouldn't be a problem for him to reach the Celestial Stairway, let alone the Star Pagoda's 10th level. However, Listen had never fought, which meant that he probably didn't like competitive duels. Even if Listen swore loyalty to himself with a willpower rune, he wouldn't be able to do such a thing. Lin Yuan still had to follow Listen's personal wishes. Listen was startled and asked subconsciously, "What do you mean by that?" "Me?" After being stunned for a moment, Listen could not help but recall when he was young. His family's elders had nurtured him, the only child of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, on how to manage it and develop its faction. Even if his family's elders were willing to pour more than half of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's resources into him, and let him have excellent phase and strength, they never allowed him to duel in the Star Tower. However, he had never allowed himself to fight in the Star Tower. He felt that it was a waste of time to learn how to manage the Chamber of Commerce and develop his faction. Slowly, Listen got used to it. No matter how much he liked to duel in the Star Tower, he no longer thought about the wanton and happy feeling when dueling in the Star Tower. After his family died at sea, Listen supported the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce by himself for 3 years, working day and night. He didn't have the energy to duel in the Star Tower anymore. However, he would occasionally train his phase when he had the time to improve his combat skills by sparring with each other. Listen never expected that Lin Yuan would invite him to join a club-like guild now. Listen was naturally very willing to do so. He just couldn't believe it. After Listen led the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to pledge loyalty to Lin Yuan, Lin Yuan immediately poured a lot of resources into the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. But up until now, he hadn't achieved anything. If Lin Yuan had not sent someone to protect him in secret, Listen knew that he would have died in the royal capital, and would not have lived until now. During this period of contact with Lin Yuan, Listen could feel that he was a very easygoing person without any airs. She could even make people feel very comfortable when interacting with Lin Yuan. However, Listen had never forgotten his identity as a servant. But now that Lin Yuan had invited him, he clearly didn't treat him as a servant. Instead, he had already placed him in the position of a partner. This made Listen feel incomparably touched. Upon hearing Listen's question, Lin Yuan smiled and explained, "Brother Lu and I have established a guild club, and we plan to participate in next year's tournament. The guild's name will be Dome Guild Club. Currently, the Dome Club's main team only consists of me and Brother Lu. If you join, you'll be the 3rd person in the Dome Club. Second, more seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes." End of chapter. Chapter 477. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's explanation and another invitation, Lin Yuan's eyes widened. Listen bent down and picked up the Pain Illusory Fox and the 3-tailed Crimson Fox. "I'm willing. I will develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce into a rising force within 4 months and also improve my strength." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan stretched out his hand. His palm stopped in midair as he spoke. "Welcome to the 3rd member of the Dome Club." When Listen saw Lin Yuan's outstretched hand, he also reached out and gently placed his hand on the back of Lin Yuan's hand. He had fulfilled his promise as a teammate. At the same time, Listen made a decision. It seemed like it was time for him to head to the Star Web for a Star Web duel. If Lin Yuan really participated in next year's tournament, given his and Lu Jia's strength, they would definitely be able to win the title of a B-class guild club. The Dome Guild Club had Black and the Radiance 100 sequence member Lu Jia. As long as the lineup of the team was announced, it would definitely attract countless gazes. Listen knew that it was impossible for him to become a Radiance 100 sequence member with his strength. However, if they could fight their way to the top of the celestial stairway, they wouldn't have to reveal their lineup. He had exposed himself to too much controversy. Since he had joined the team, he had become a member of the team. They needed to have irreplaceable value in the team to prove that they could exist in an outstanding team. Otherwise, if he was treated as a chef, people would say that his dish was a dish that went well with rice during the one dish everyday competition. Then the big shots on Star Web would pick out some mistakes and make them into a meal collection. Listen felt that his pride could not take it. After chatting with Listen, Lin Yuan returned to his tent. After entering the tent, Lin Yuan did not rest. Instead, he entered the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. As soon as he entered the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, he noticed plenty of snow-white feathers on the Pure Land of Bliss. At that moment, Morbius' voice echoed in his mind. "Lin Yuan, something happened to Gray." Before Lin Yuan could ask, Morbius said, "Don't worry. The Pure Land of Bliss in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone is connected to the Pure Land of Bliss outside the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. Back then, the Pure Land of Bliss outside was absorbing the Heaven and Earth Grace. Gray has just recovered its genetic model and awakened. The awakened Gray has also accidentally absorbed a trace of Heaven and Earth Grace. This trace of Heaven and Earth Grace allowed Gray, which had just recovered its genetic model, to enter a state of sublimation." After hearing Morbius' words, Lin Yuan was pleasantly surprised. Back then, Gray was so weak that it looked like it could die at any moment. Now that it had completed its genetic model, it could be said that it had made a great leap. However, he didn't expect that Gray, who had just crossed the Dragon's Gate, would have another opportunity to soar into the 9 heavens. The genetic model evolution was an extremely rare and powerful mutation, and it would mostly happen in young phase. Under the condition of preserving the phase original genes, the genetic model would be more perfectly optimized. Just like the relationship between the blue flash butterfly and the blue flash purple butterfly. The blue flash purple butterfly was the result of the evolution of the blue flash butterfly's genes in the cocoon. However, the evolution of the genetic model was mostly a natural mutation during the development of the genetic model. Heaven and earth, Lin said. Lin and heaven and spirit. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard Morbius speak again. Although the spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone is pure enough, the concentration of spirit chi isn't enough to support Gray's genetic model advancement. In order to complete Gray's genetic model sublimation, spirit chi crystals are needed. Upon hearing Morbius mention spirit chi crystals, Lin Yuan looked at the pile of spirit chi crystals again. He had a lot of spirit chi crystals, so he didn't feel the pinch if he used a few of them. Since Gray had such an opportunity, Lin Yuan naturally wouldn't let it miss it. Lin Yuan walked to the small pile of spirit chi crystals under the limestone bowl. He picked up one of the spirit chi crystals. Looking at the pile of spirit chi crystals in front of him, Lin Yuan had an incomparably fulfilling feeling. Lin Yuan didn't count the number of spirit chi crystals, but he guessed that there were at least 300 of them. If the current Bronze X/Legend Morbius were to condense so many spirit chi crystals, it would take at least 6 years to condense them. This also meant that the Cold Snow Pine's Heaven and Earth Grace would allow Lin Yuan to have a significant increase in strength. In fact, when Lin Yuan used these spirit chi crystals again, he did not need to be as frugal as before. Lin Yuan took one of the spirit chi crystals and walked to Gray. Gray's body was about the same size as before, but it was noticeably heavier. Gray was sleeping on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus's branch, causing the branch to bend. Gray's feathers were as white could be, and it had a golden beak and a crown that was several times redder than the cinnabar sweet osmanthus's flowers. It gave Gray an indescribable elegance even in its slumber. Lin Yuan used true data to check on Gray's attributes. Fey name: Cloud crane, Fey species, feathered crane/red crane, Fey grade, normal 1/10, Fey type, spiritual Fey quality, normal abilities, frowny face, cloud transformation, turns its body into a cloud. The cloud has a certain visual shielding effect, and spiritual energy detection will also be obstructed. After Gray's genetic model was completely restored, its name under true data was Cloud Crane. It was considered a spiritual type support type Fey. Lin Yuan carefully checked the information on Gray's true data. When Lin Yuan saw Gray's normal ability, his expression froze slightly. Cloud Crane Hui Hui's normal level skill, Cloud Transformation, seemed like a self-defense ability. It could effectively prevent physical attacks from harming itself. However, Gray's Cloud Transformation actually had a concealment effect that prevented detection. This allowed Gray's normal ability to be used as an anti-detection ability. Gray's normal ability, Cloud Transformation, was too conspicuous on land, and the cloud concealment could only be used as an area of effect concealment ability. But what if it was used in the boundless flowing clouds in the sky? The strategic significance would be completely different. Especially when Gray's grade and quality increased, the range of cloud transformation would increase, and the concealment effect would become stronger. By then, Gray's normal ability, Cloud Transformation, might not be useful to others, but it would be very useful to Lin Yuan. However, it was very useful to Lin Yuan. After all, he still had the floating island whale that had yet to hatch. First, more. Seeking monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 478. In Lin Yuan's opinion, Gray's normal cloud transformation was a perfect match for the floating island whale. After becoming a fantasy breed, the floating island whale floated in the sky. No matter how high it floated, it was still too huge. Even if Lin Yuan had the spatial teleportation source-type ethereal jellyfish, he could use its exclusive skill to establish a space tunnel between the Sky City and the ground to complete the interaction between the sky and ground resources. However, this was not a perfect solution. The floating island whale's role had never been just a floating land in the sky, but a deterrent war fortress. Although the floating island whale itself wasn't strong, its true strength lay in the war and defensive attacks it carried on its back. Moreover, the floating island whale's flying speed was extremely fast, and it was the best way to travel back and forth between the continents in this huge world. Lin Yuan could not always choose to hide such a war fortress in the sky. If he really hid the floating island whale, it would be like throwing away the watermelon to pick the sesame seed. However, with the cloud crane, even if the floating island whale soared in the sky, it could always hide in the depths of the clouds. The visual shielding effect of Gray's cloud transformation was extremely useful. At the same time, it had a certain ability to obstruct spiritual detection. This meant that as long as Gray was strong enough, the effect of cloud transformation would be stronger. The Sky City on the floating island whale's back could become a legend that only existed in the sky beyond the clouds. The more Lin Yuan thought about it, the more excited he became. Then he crushed the Spirit Chi crystal. He let Morbius guide the majestic Spirit Chi in the Spirit Chi crystal to fall on Gray's sleeping body for it to absorb. However, after using the Spirit Chi crystal, Gray did not see any effect. Lin Yuan frowned slightly and reached out to place his hand on Gray's back. He circulated the spiritual power in his body, and guided the huge Spirit Chi in the Spirit Lock spatial zone into Gray's body. As the huge Spirit Chi wandered on the surface of Gray's body, Lin Yuan could feel that every inch of Gray's cells was like the mother of bloodbath that had starved for decades. He frantically absorbed the spiritual Chi that entered his body. In the end, when the pure Spirit Chi broke through Gray's body surface, it was instantly absorbed by the cells on the inner and outer layer of Gray's skin. There was no chance for the Spirit Chi to enter Gray's body. After feeling it, Lin Yuan knew that if he wanted Gray's genetic model to sublimate, the number of Spirit Chi crystals needed would definitely not be small. There had never been a special case of a Fae being able to sublimate its genetic model by absorbing world cleansing. In other words, Gray's genetic model upgrade was a miracle created by the epic of nature's life by chance. Although the genetic model sublimation could be forcibly interrupted. However, interrupting the evolution of the genetic model was tantamount to depriving Cloud Crane of a chance to soar into the sky. In other words, it was equivalent to him personally destroying a miracle created in the Epic of Life chapter. Since he had decided to contract Gray, it would be the same as when he had chosen to nurture Chimey and Genius. Genius was just a housekeeping beast that wasn't even a Fae, while Chimey was a songstress bird that had failed to evolve into a normal Fae. However, Lin Yuan still resolutely led them on a path that no one had ever walked before. Lin Yuan grabbed a handful of Spirit Chi crystals from the pile and returned to Gray's side. Every time he crushed a Spirit Chi crystal, he would let Morbius absorb the huge amount of pure Spirit Chi contained in it. He guided it into Gray's body. 20. Gray's absorption of the Spirit Chi in the Spirit Chi crystal finally slowed down after consuming the 25th Spirit Chi crystal. When the 30th Spirit Chi crystal had been consumed by more than half, Yin Wei finally stopped absorbing the Spirit Chi. At that moment, all the feathers on Gray's body fell off. These feathers did not fall to the ground. Instead, they floated around Gray's body. Gray continued to experience the process of growing feathers and then falling off. Lin Yuan finally understood why there were so many white feathers on the pure land of bliss in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. However, the more Lin Yuan looked at Gray's newly grown feathers, the more he realized that each time Gray's feathers fell off, it would be different from before. Every time a new feather grew, it was as though the feather had been meticulously sculpted and optimized. Lin Yuan realized that Gray's feathers were much better than when he had let the source sand use its metal-consume manifestation. It was much better than the divine travel black swallow's feathers. Finally, on Chimey's latest feather, the tip of the feather had a faint golden pattern. It gave Chimey's originally elegant aura a hint of profoundness. Lin Yuan realized that the newly grown feather with the golden pattern was even better than Gray's perfect feathers. The feathers that had been floating around Gray's body were now attached to its body. They formed a huge white eggshell made of feathers. This huge white eggshell was beating gently as though it was nurturing the birth of a new life. When Lin Yuan used true data to check on Gray's exclusive skill, he was dumbfounded. Gray was originally a Fae, but after its genetic model was optimized, it had turned from a normal Fae into a heaven and earth Fae, like the floating island whale. Gray was no longer called a cloudy crane. It was called the sky cloudy crane. Gray's sudden transformation into a heaven and earth fae caught Lin Yuan off guard. Gray had returned to its previous state of deep slumber. It could only be reborn after it hatched from the feather eggshell. However, the contract method for heaven and earth phase was different from ordinary phase. Lin Yuan had just discovered that Gray's contract method was the same as the floating island whales. They both needed to feel the contractor's bloodline during the incubation period. After hatching, the fae would take the initiative to form a contract with the contractor. Lin Yuan could not help but think of how Gray had always been so attached to him. In Lin Yuan's opinion, even if he did not strengthen the bloodline relationship between him and Gray, after Gray evolved into the sky cloudy crane, it would also take the initiative to form a contract with him. However, blood could strengthen the bloodline relationship with heaven and earth phase. It could also increase the spiritual connection with heaven and earth phase. Therefore, not a single drop of blood could be missing. Second update explode with new chapters afternoon tomorrow. Hehe. Seeking monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 479. Lin Yuan couldn't help but hold his forehead. Every time he enhanced the bloodline relationship with the floating island whale, a large amount of blood in his body would be absorbed by its crystal eggshell. It made him feel as though his body was being hollowed out. Now there was the addition of a little fellow like Gray. That was practically double the hollowing out and double the happiness. Lin Yuan felt that he really should ask Zhang Xiaobai about his maintenance tips and how he had been facing the bloody leech's devastation. Otherwise, no matter how strong his body was, he wouldn't be able to withstand the two heaven and earth phase, the floating island whale and the heaven cloud crane. Lin Yuan had 100 rejections in his mind. But his body was incomparably honest. He had already begun to strengthen the bloodline connection between him and the heaven cloud crane. The first time he strengthened his bloodline connection with Gray, he deliberately used the blood from the tip of the tongue, which was the closest to his heart's blood, just like when he had first established a bloodline connection with the floating island whale. After nearly 2 hours, Lin Yuan finally completed strengthening his bloodline connection with Gray and the floating island whale. During this period, Lin Yuan relied on the vitality released by the jasmine lily's main flower to recover his qi blood bit by bit. Otherwise, with Lin Yuan's current state, even a swimming pool would have dried up long ago. After swaying twice on the spot, Lin Yuan sat on the ground. Lin Yuan didn't care about the side effects of the jasmine lily's heal ability, and let it crazily heal him for 3 minutes. That extremely comfortable feeling, and the dizziness from losing too much blood almost made him fall asleep in the spirit lock spatial zone. However, after he woke up from that extremely comfortable feeling, he didn't know what to do. Lin Yuan's dizziness from losing too much blood had completely recovered. Previously, when Morbius conducted the spirit qi in the spirit qi crystal to help Gray sublimate its genetic model, there was still some spirit qi left. Morbius asked Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, Gray only consumed more than half of the energy in the 30th energy crystal. The remaining energy should be enough to upgrade 2 to 3 bronze/epic phase from epic to legend. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan didn't even hesitate to take out the Celestine elemental shellfish, Scorching elemental shellfish, and Aquamarine elemental shellfish from the Spirit Lock spatial zone. These 3 elemental shellfish were currently bronze X/epic. If he raised the quality of these 3 elemental shellfish from epic to legendary now, the elemental shellfish would not be able to survive. Then, the speed at which the Scorching elemental shellfish, Celestine elemental shellfish, and Aquamarine elemental shellfish produced elemental pearls would undoubtedly be faster than before. He was now a little regretful that he had not used the spirit qi crystals to upgrade the 3 elemental shellfish from epic to legend. Who knew how many heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls he had lost in such a long time? Morbius controlled the remaining spirit energy in the 30th spirit energy crystal, and injected it into the bodies of the 3 elemental shellfish. The Scorching elemental shellfish and the Celestine elemental shellfish immediately became bigger than before. The elemental patterns on the shell also became more obvious. And the color of the shellfish meat also became closer to the color of the different types of elements. When the shells opened, they would spit out misty elemental energy. This meant that the scorching elemental shellfish and celestine elemental shellfish had been successfully upgraded to legend. However, the quality of the aquamarine elemental shellfish was not upgraded due to the lack of spirit energy in the spirit crystals. In such a situation, Lin Yuan could check the speed at which the bronze X/legend elemental shellfish produced elemental pearls. It was much faster than the bronze/epic elemental shellfish produced elemental pearls. Since the elemental pearls produced by elemental shellfish of different attributes were the same, Lin Yuan used it for comparison. During his 2-hour observation, Lin Yuan found that the bronze X/legend scorching elemental shellfish produced a total of 8 elemental pearls. As for the bronze X/epic aquamarine elemental shellfish, only 6 were produced. Such a ratio did not seem very shocking. However, as time passed, this difference of 1/4 was quantified. It was enough to be called a shocking wealth. Of course, no one else could accumulate such wealth. Unless they also had a treasure land like Morbius Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, which had a high concentration of pure spirit energy, and was inexhaustible. Lin Yuan simply took out the 2 young elemental shellfish that he had exchanged from Master Jing Lu, for 200 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls produced by the fire-type scorching elemental shellfish. Lin Yuan had already made plans for these 2 young elemental shellfish. What Lin Yuan needed to do was to induce the 2 young elemental shellfish to mutate into thick earth elemental shellfish. First of all, the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls produced by elemental shellfish of different attributes could be circulated at a 1-to-1 price. Therefore, no matter what attribute Lin Yuan nurtured, there was actually not much difference in essence. Lin Yuan had chosen to evolve the 2 young elemental shellfish into thick earth elemental shellfish, because the source sand wanted to increase its grade and quality. In addition to relying on the spirit chi in the spirit chi crystals, the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls produced by the thick earth elemental shellfish were also an excellent choice for improvement. At the same time, the pure earth element energy in the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls produced by the thick earth elemental shellfish could also temper the source sand. Under Lin Yuan's guidance, Lin Yuan soon nurtured the 2 thick earth elemental shellfish easily. After nurturing them, Lin Yuan immediately raised their grade to bronze X/epic. Then, Lin Yuan summoned the 3 red water blood snakes with the hornless dragon bloodline that he had traded in the Indigo Azure Sea market from the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. These 3 red water blood snakes with the hornless dragon bloodline were the raw materials needed for the Mother of Bloodbath's 3rd exclusive skill, External Bloodbone, after it had become a myth-breed fae. The Mother of Bloodbath's exclusive skill and strength improvement could not be sloppy at all. Therefore, Lin Yuan had specifically asked the Mother of Bloodbath for its opinion on the choice of these 3 exclusive skills. To the Mother of Bloodbath, the exclusive skills of these 3 red water blood snakes were not important. After the Mother of Bloodbath had used the spider teeth that it had shed previously to fuse, these 3 red water blood snakes with the hornless dragon bloodline were equivalent to a part of the Mother of Bloodbath's body. Therefore, these 3 exclusive skills with the hornless dragon bloodline would all be dominated by the Mother of Bloodbath. They would become the same as the Mother of Bloodbath's exclusive skills. Therefore, when Lin Yuan enhanced these 3 red water blood snakes with the hornless dragon bloodline, he did not need to consider the choice of exclusive skills when they were promoted to bronze. First update. End of this chapter. Chapter 480. Lin Yuan looked at the 3 red water blood snakes and could not help but sigh. These 3 red water blood snakes were indeed creatures with the hornless dragon bloodline. Half a day ago, he had been sprinkled with realgar powder, but now it was as if he hadn't been hurt at all. They had all recovered and were in high spirits. He enhanced the 3 red water blood snakes with the hornless dragon bloodline. After a few hours, the red water blood snakes had all been upgraded to bronze X/epic. Although the exclusive skills of these 3 red water blood snakes weren't important when they were promoted to bronze, they weren't important. However, he still upgraded the 3 red water blood snakes to elite/epic when they reached bronze. Then he picked out the one that he thought was the strongest from the 3 exclusive skills that had appeared. After that he took another spirit chi crystal and crushed it. Under Morbius' guidance, the 3 bronze/epic red water blood snakes, the 2 thick earth elemental shellfish, and the aquamarine elemental shellfish that had not been successfully upgraded were strengthened. As the aquamarine elemental shellfish had absorbed a lot of high-purity spirit chi from the spirit chi crystals, it was already on the verge of breaking through to the legend quality. Therefore, all 6 bronze/epic phase had been promoted to legend with the help of 1 spirit chi crystal. He first stored the 3-tailed bronze/legend red water blood snake into a platinum phase storage box. He planned to hand them over to the Mother of Bloodbath when he returned to the royal capital. Then he placed the aquamarine elemental shellfish and celestine elemental shellfish back in their original positions. As a heaven and earth fae, the floating island whale could devour the spirit chi, water, and wind elements within the spirit lock spatial zone. However, there was a limit to how much he could absorb at one time. When the aquamarine elemental shellfish and celestine elemental shellfish were at epic quality, they were just enough to supply the floating island whale. Now that the quality had been upgraded, he would be able to save 1 wind element heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl produced by the celestine elemental shellfish every hour. There were also heavenly maiden level water elemental pearls produced by the aquamarine elemental shellfish. As for the heavenly maiden level fire attribute elemental pearls produced by the scorching elemental shellfish, the life-form sacrificial fire in the twin red pagoda's main flower had yet to mature. Therefore, the speed at which they were collecting them was much faster than before. In addition to the 2 heavenly maiden grade earth elemental pearls produced by the thick earth shellfish, the source sand could only consume 1 pearl after a certain period of time. Therefore, Lin Yuan was basically accumulating earth-type heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. Lin Yuan felt that although he had spent all the resources that could flow in the Indigo Azure Sea market, he had spent them all. However, according to the current rate of accumulation of resources, he would soon become rich. With the production speed of the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him the Prince of Elemental Pearls. Lin Yuan looked at the time and realized that it was already past 5 in the morning. Lin Yuan spent another night in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. However, when he saw the elemental shellfish constantly spitting out heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls, he didn't feel tired at all. Instead, he felt extremely fulfilled. It was still early. Last night, they had agreed to wake up at 7:30. There were still close to 2 hours left for him to continue enhancing phase. Lin Yuan took out the fairy source-type life form, the burning sunflower. Looking at the thumb-sized, celestial-shaped burning sunflower, just as he held it in his hand and was about to enhance it, his expression froze. He then stored the fairy source-type life form, the burning sunflower, into the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Chu Xi and Cold Moon were now training outside, and their strength must have improved. Lin Yuan didn't know how strong Chu Xi's strength was now. Therefore, it was better to wait for Chu Xi to return and have a better understanding of her phase. Then he would take Chu Xi's bronze/epic Vajra butterfly and enhance it to bronze/legend together with the burning sunflower. Chu Xi had grown up. As her elder brother, even if he wanted to be good to his younger sister, he had to respect her. Lin Yuan planned to let Chu Xi choose the burning sunflower's exclusive skill herself. Chu Xi was now a combat class spirit chi professional, and could see the road she had to walk more clearly than others. Now Lin Yuan only hoped that after this burning sunflower was nurtured, Chu Xi would choose it, so that Chu Xi's combat style would not be so reckless. Iron Bucket Sister Nurturing Plan 3. 0 nurtured a sturdy iron bucket, not a self-destructing bucket. If he nurtured Chu Xi into a self-destructing bucket, Lin Yuan felt that he would be letting down his identity as her elder brother. After storing the burning sunflower, Lin Yuan took the Blood Brew grapevine out of the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. The Blood Brew grapevine that Lin Yuan had traded in the Indigo Azure Sea market was Platinum 4/epic. It was a mature heaven and earth fae. A mature heaven and earth fae like the Blood Brew grapevine only needed to be supplied with enough blood. The Blood Brew grapevine could absorb the energy in the blood and produce Blood Brew grapes. The blood brew grapevine had extremely high requirements for blood quality and quantity. For a platinum blood brew grapevine to produce a bunch of blood brew grapes, it needed at least 1,000 platinum phase blood energy. Moreover, the blood energy in these 1,000 platinum phase couldn't be supplied by ordinary blood. It had to be purified to obtain the blood essence. The blood brew grapevine also had very strict requirements for blood essence. If the blood essence's quality was not up to standard, even if it produced blood brew grapes, the grapes would be too small. Lin Yuan had previously speculated about the relationship between Red Thorn's Eye of Relinquish and the blood brew grapevine. Lin Yuan was a little apprehensive and did not know if the blood brew grapevine could absorb the Eye of Relinquish. Could it produce blood brew grapes? Lin Yuan summoned Red Thorn from the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. When Red Thorn saw Lin Yuan, it immediately became cheerful. It was obvious that it had evolved a large flower with gill-shaped petals and started to blow. Lin Yuan, Red Thorn misses you. Although Red Thorn's gill-shaped flower's words were somewhat intermittent, it was obvious that Red Thorn could express what it wanted to express. During this period of time, Red Thorn's gill-shaped flower was definitely able to express what it wanted to express. During this period of time, it could be said that Genius had definitely contributed a lot. Ever since Genius had promised to teach Red Thorn to speak, it had been dutifully going to the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box to guide Red Thorn when it had nothing to do. Second update. End of this chapter. Chapter 481. The leaf-shaped diamond face storage box contained plenty of dimensional lifeforms' flesh, so the smell was extremely unpleasant. However, as long as Red Thorn's mouth of relinquish was activated, the energy wave that was emitted was enough to block out all the smells around the mouth of relinquish. When Genius entered the leaf-shaped face storage box, it would land on the flesh-shaped flower on Red Thorn's mouth of relinquish. He didn't have to stuff his nose with a paper ball, made of fresh grass pulp like before. Lin Yuan realized that Red Thorn was indeed worthy of being Genius's disciple. When she acted coquettishly, she looked just like a smart girl. Upon seeing that Red Thorn could already speak simple words, Lin Yuan felt rather proud. Half a year ago, Red Thorn was just a source seed without any shape or location. But now, under his guidance, it had developed and evolved so successfully. Moreover, he found that as Red Thorn's intelligence increased, it would usually digest the flesh energy in the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. He no longer used the mouth of relinquish to stuff food and munch like before. Instead, he began to spawn a few nibbling vines, using them to scrape the flesh and blood of the gold water world dimensional life forms. The flesh and blood that had been scraped into mud were then transported to the mouth of relinquish through the roots of the nibbling vines and mother plant. Then, the mouth of relinquish and tongue of relinquish would secrete acid that was most suitable for digesting the flesh and blood of water world dimensional life forms. To digest the gold water world dimensional life forms' flesh and blood. This method had obviously sped up Red Thorn's digestion. However, this wasn't as simple as speeding up the digestion. In Lin Yuan's opinion, such behavior meant that Red Thorn was starting to pay attention to its image, and was slowly evolving into a lady. Previously, when Red Thorn had evolved a vine without any thorns, it had only required Lin Yuan to tie a butterfly knot. But slowly, Red Thorn felt that it would look better if Lin Yuan used 3 different colored ribbons to tie a bow knot. In half a day's time, the Eye of Relinquish, which had been completely depleted, had been devoured by Red Thorn. Almost half of the Eyes of Relinquish had already grown, which was close to 30 Eyes of Relinquish. Lin Yuan said to Red Thorn, "Red Thorn, can you remove the Eye of Relinquish that is used to store flesh energy?" Originally, Red Thorn was still playing with the 10 huge red gill-shaped flowers. However, after hearing Lin Yuan's question, Red Thorn immediately became well-behaved and urged its spore cavity to spit out some spores. The spores spat out by Red Thorn gave birth to 2 nibbling vines under Lin Yuan's feet. Red Thorn transmitted an Eye of Relinquish over through the rhizome that was connected to the nibbling vines. The 2 nibbling vines then rolled up the Eye of Relinquish and obediently handed it to Lin Yuan. Although Red Thorn's Eyes of Relinquish could only grow 60 eyes at most, Red Thorn's Eyes of Relinquish were extremely powerful. The eyes of relinquish that were condensed during the battle would immediately become an important method for Red Thorn to spread out its sea of flowers or attack. However, he had seen Red Thorn remove the eyes of relinquish from the mouth of relinquish when it was not in combat. He used this smooth vine without any spikes to treat the eye of relinquish as a toy. It was also because of this discovery that Lin Yuan had seen the blood brew grapevine. That was why he had the thought of using the eye of relinquish to nurture the blood brew grapevine. The mouth of relinquish digestion speed had always been extremely fast. However, Red Thorn's absorption speed was relatively slow when it wanted to upgrade its level and quality. This also caused the mouth of relinquish to be in a low-frequency state after it was filled with eyes of relinquish. Only when the number of eyes of relinquish is less than 60, only then would Red Thorn circulate the mouth of relinquish to a high-frequency state and store the excess energy from the flesh and blood that it digested into the eye of relinquish. Therefore, Lin Yuan's wanton consumption of the eyes of relinquish would not slow down Red Thorn's improvement in strength and quality. He just needed to consume more dimensional creatures' flesh. He took one of Red Thorn's eyes of relinquish and placed it at the roots of the blood brew grapevine. As a Platinum 4/Epic blood brew grapevine, it could already feed on its own through its roots. If the eye of relinquish contained pure flesh energy, the blood brew grapevine wouldn't be able to absorb it. In that case, he could only go and purchase Platinum Phase Essence blood on Star Web. He would use the Platinum Phase Essence blood to nurture the blood brew grapevine. This would allow the blood brew grapevine to bear blood brew grapes. After placing the eye of relinquish on the blood brew grapevine's roots, Lin Yuan held his breath and observed the blood brew grapevine's actions. The blood brew grapevine's roots wrapped around Red Thorn's eye of relinquish and tightened its grip. The tip of the roots poked at the eye of relinquish. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He didn't expect the eye of relinquish skin to be so tough. Or perhaps the blood brew grapevine's roots were just too weak. Lin Yuan simply let the source sand produce a feather made of day and night spirit silver. He took the feather made of day and night spirit silver and gently cut a gap on the eye of relinquish. Subsequently, a few blood brew grapevine's roots drilled into the hole that Lin Yuan had just made. Immediately after, Lin Yuan noticed blood-colored energy ripples around the blood brew grapevine's body. On the shelf that the old man had set up for the blood brew grapevine, new and tender vines suddenly began to grow out. The sticky red juice that dripped from the hole that the blood brew grapevine had made was also slowly drying up. Lin Yuan reached out to touch it, and the thick layer of red sap on the outside peeled off. The wound on the hole had already become very small. The blood brew grapevine's absorption of the eye of relinquished flesh energy was still very fast. In just 20 minutes, the blood brew grapevine had completely absorbed the eye of relinquished flesh energy. Lin Yuan realized that the blood brew grapevine's absorption of the eye of relinquished flesh energy was actually about the same as Red Thorn's condensation of the eye of relinquish. Lin Yuan took out the remaining 29 eyes of relinquish and placed them beside the blood brew grapevine's roots. Lin Yuan then used the feather made of day and night spirit silver to gently make a small hole on each eye of relinquish. This small hole was not enough for the eye of relinquished flesh energy to spill out. However, it could allow the blood brew grapevine's roots to break through the eye of relinquished surface. Third update. Reward for cynical love more. End of this chapter. Chapter 482. After releasing the blood brew grapevine, Lin Yuan realized that the blood brew grapevine was quite greedy. Originally, the blood brew grapevine didn't have that many roots, so it couldn't be used. However, in order to occupy all the eyes of relinquish, the blood brew grapevine had actually grown many young roots. After the young roots grew out, they entered every eye of relinquish together with the old roots. After ensuring that all the eyes of relinquish were occupied, the blood brew grapevine started to wantonly absorb the flesh energy of the eyes of relinquish. Moreover, he realized that the blood brew grapevine had its own tricks during this process. The tip of the blood brew grapevine's newly grown roots were much sharper than the older ones, and had a layer of sharp, woodified keratin. With these new young roots, the blood brew grapevine would no longer need Lin Yuan's help. Instead, he could rely on himself to break through the eye of relinquished defenses. The boundless energy from the 29 eyes of Relinquish was slowly absorbed into the blood brew grapevine's body. The blood brew grapevine began to sprout new branches from its vines. The blood brew grapevine was now twice as lush as it had been before, with a large number of young branches sprouting out of it. Lin Yuan did not care about this. The old man who had sold the blood brew grapevine must have trimmed all the branches and leaves of the blood brew grapevine. Only one main vine was left, ensuring that all the blood energy absorbed by the blood brew grapevine would be supplied to the bunch of blood brew grapes on the main vine. Compared to using this method to cultivate the blood brew grapevine to obtain the blood brew grapes, the blood brew grapevine was much stronger. Instead, Lin Yuan hoped that the blood brew grapevine would grow more vines and bear more blood brew grapes. Although this would undoubtedly increase the time it took for the blood brew grapevine to produce more blood brew grapes, the blood brew grapevine was still able to produce more blood brew grapes. However, not pruning the blood brew grapevine's branches would ensure that the blood brew grapevine wouldn't lose any energy. After all, the blood brew grapevine had absorbed a large amount of blood qi in order to grow these branches. If the mother of bloodbath wanted to advance to myth 3, it would need to eat countless blood brew grapes. Allowing the blood brew grapevines to produce blood brew grapes on such a large scale would allow the mother of bloodbath to eat to its heart's content every time the blood brew grapes were harvested. After observing for a while, and finding that there were no problems, he stored red thorn and the blood brew grapevine in the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan had wanted to use the Eye of Relinquish to test the blood brew grapevine, so he had not let red thorn keep the Eye of Relinquish. However, Lin Yuan was going to use red thorn's Eye of Relinquish to nurture the blood brew grapevine. He still had to maintain the Eye of Relinquish on red thorn at the maximum value of 60. The extra eyes of Relinquish were immediately placed by red thorn at the roots of the blood brew grapevine, through the nibbling vines. He would nurture the blood brew grapevine. Although Lin Yuan's main fei was the gold eye/fantasy eye source sand, the silver eye/fantasy eye red thorn's combat ability focused on targeting groups, and it could only be of great use under certain circumstances. However, he was still used to maintaining his combat power at the maximum. He had to be in his best condition to face any possible unexpected situation. Even if he had experts like the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer protecting him, as well as the extreme token that the Moon Empress had given him, he would not be able to defeat them. However, Lin Yuan still felt that he should be in awe. The blood brew grapevine was able to absorb red thorn's Eye of Relinquish, and it was growing at a faster rate. Lin Yuan was finally relieved. He had to admit that he had saved a huge sum of money. The eyes of Relinquish that red thorn had produced came from the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. The water world dimensional lifeforms were huge, and the price of each flesh was exceptionally cheap. It could be said that they were the cheapest flesh material in this world. Redthorn only relied on these gold water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh to save Lin Yuan the trouble of collecting phase essence blood. Lin Yuan had been worried about the gold water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh, but he had found a way to buy them on the way to the Indigo Azure Sea market. The active period of the dimensional rift was about to arrive, and it could be said that he had an inexhaustible supply of water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh to trade with the Indigo Azure Guards. Lin Yuan planned to immediately make a deal with the middle-aged man from the Indigo Azure Guard after returning to the royal capital. It would be best to get a diamond face storage box's gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh as a backup. Lin Yuan suddenly thought that if the mother of Bloodbath knew that its blood brew grapes were processed from the gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh when it ate them, it would probably feel nauseous. However, Lin Yuan felt that the raw materials were not important. What was important was that the blood brew grapes were crystal clear, juicy, and full. They contained the blood energy that the mother of Bloodbath needed the most. It was just like how Jinkala was a good partner for crops. Lin Yuan, who had been busy with other things, could finally get busy with his own matters. He took out the strategic grade mountain-containing embryo that he had previously traded from the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan looked at this mountain-containing embryo that was beating like an embryo. The more he looked, the more he felt that it looked like a potato. However, when he held it in his hand, the aura it emitted as it pulsed had a kind of virtuous bearing feeling. It was as if this small earth-yellow spherical object could lift 10,000 mountains. Or it could be said that the mountain-containing embryo gave Lin Yuan the feeling of a mountain itself. Lin Yuan let the amber button-shaped source sand on his cuff turn into a handful of gravel, and wrapped it around the pulsing mountain-containing embryo. Lin Yuan could feel that the source sand's consciousness, which was not considered intelligent, transmitted an abnormal feeling of joy. It was obvious that the source sand could feel the mountain-containing embryo's benefits to itself. The mountain-containing embryo had the willpower of a mountain range that was constantly changing. Therefore, Lin Yuan let the source sand absorb the mountain-containing embryo. At the same time, he let the source sand's exclusive skill, metal-consume manifestation, devour the day and night spirit silver, and memorize the divine travel black swallow's feather shape. It turned into the gold-edged feather shape that grew when gray transformed into the heaven and earth fae, the sky-clouded crane. The gold-edged feather shape was far more complicated than the divine travel black swallow's feather shape. Therefore, it would take a period of time to complete the memory and all the changes. At the same time, the source sand also needed a period of time to consume and absorb the mountain-containing embryo's evolving ability. Therefore, Lin Yuan put away the source sand, which was wrapping and absorbing the mountain-containing embryo. Fourth update. Tipping and adding updates. End of this chapter. Chapter 483. It was just that the source sand, which was absorbing the mountain-containing embryo, had turned into an amber button. It was as though a potato was sealed in the amber button, which originally had a yellow sand world inside. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh. Could this be the legendary rustic nobility? Now that it was almost time, Lin Yuan exited the spirit lock spatial zone and returned to his tent. When he appeared in the tent, he could already faintly smell the seafood porridge coming from outside. Big brother Lu must have already started making breakfast. Lin Yuan stretched and walked out of the tent. As soon as he left the tent, he found that the mother of Bloodbath had actually woken up early and was beside the big pot of seafood porridge that Wuxia had lit. From time to time, it would add some peeled fresh prawns, scallops, and abalone diced into the seafood porridge. The mother of Bloodbath added again and again, unable to stop. The more the mother of Bloodbath added, the faster Wuxia's eyelids twitched. When the mother of Bloodbath was about to add some fried fish diced, Wuxia hurriedly stopped it. If you add more abalone diced, this pot of porridge will be too thick. After hearing Wuxia's words, the mother of Bloodbath stopped adding the abalone diced into the pot. Instead it asked, "This is my first time cooking. What if Lin Yuan and Listen find it unpalatable if I add too little?" Wuxia took out a crystal bottle of salt powder and handed it to the mother of Bloodbath. "These seafood are all bought in the morning, and you also added some platinum 9-ring star abalone liver juice. It won't taste bad. Just add some salt to bring out the freshness of the porridge to the greatest extent. Open the lid of this crystal bottle and turn it 4 times. The amount of salt should be enough." Lin Yuan raised his brows. This morning's breakfast was cooked by the mother of Bloodbath. However, Wuxia's meticulous guidance was so detailed that he even told Lin Yuan how much salt to add. Rather than saying that the mother of Bloodbath was cooking, it was better to say that Wuxia, the chef, was cooking with his mouth. The mother of Bloodbath, the cook, was helping the chef at the side. The sun shone brightly on the sea, and there were fine waves rolling along the blue sea's edge. However, there was not the slightest bit of vitality under the rising water. This coastal sea had been completely drained of energy by the sea burial lotus flower, and it was completely barren. It might not recover in 100 years. Without phase frequenting this sea region, as long as there were no water world dimensional rifts, there would not be any danger. It was a good place for a vacation. Lin Yuan and the others were enjoying the rich ingredients, especially the mother of Bloodbath's delicious seafood porridge with platinum 9-ring star abalone liver juice. On the other side, the Zheng family was not calm. A middle-aged man with 3 scars on his face was pushing a wheelchair on a small path in the courtyard. The chill of the cold night in the morning had yet to dissipate, causing the skinny young man who was sitting on the wheelchair to be covered with a thick blanket. He also had a white fur coat draped over him. The middle-aged man with 3 scars on his face bowed when he saw the skinny young man wrapped himself in a fur coat. Third young master, we've been out for more than twice as long as usual. Why don't we go back after we finish this path? The skinny young man who was sitting on the wheelchair was obviously in a good mood. There's no hurry. After we finish this path, bring me to the plum forest at the back to take a look. It hasn't snowed in Indigo Azure City for a long time. Without the white snow as a contrast, the red plum blossoms don't look as stunning. Instead, the usually unremarkable white plum blossoms have a special flavor when you look at them. The man with 3 scars on his face heard this and knew that the third young master's mood could not be described as ordinary good. The middle-aged man with 3 scars on his face obviously knew why the third young master was in such a good mood. Third young master, there was a heavy snowfall on the sea last night, but it stopped after a short while. The skinny young man who was addressed as the third young master chuckled. The snow stopped at the sea, but since it started elsewhere, how could it stop so easily? It's a pity that my legs are inconvenient, so I couldn't enjoy the show at the sea last night. The skinny young man suddenly asked, Uncle Fu, even Nightmare 6 disappeared. Uncle Fu, even Nightmare 6 has disappeared. Can second brother still sit still? The middle-aged man with 3 scars on his face looked at the third young master's current state, and didn't say anything. That was because the middle-aged man with 3 scars on his face knew that the third young master was immersed in his own world, and had entered a state of soliloquy. Disturbing him at this time would result in serious trouble. Sure enough, the middle-aged man with 3 scars on his face heard the third young master suddenly sigh. Sigh, second brother's legs aren't broken yet, so he naturally won't be able to sit still like me. But if second brother's legs are really broken, he won't be able to sit still even if he wants to. The middle-aged man who thought that the weather was sunny and warm suddenly felt the wind turn cold for some reason. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared out of thin air beside the skinny young man's wheelchair. He was dressed in a black robe, but his figure was much taller than ordinary people. It made the black robe look a little bulky. After the black figure appeared, he tilted his head and whispered in the skinny young man's ear. Third young master, the news has been confirmed. Nightmare 6 is dead. In addition, I have already delivered the things that you asked me to deliver. The skinny young man sat in the wheelchair and stretched in satisfaction. His fingers tapped on the wheelchair's armrest, and he was obviously in a better mood than before. Lin Yuan had just come out of the sea and checked the ethereal jellyfish's speed of collecting floating silver strands. He found that the ethereal jellyfish's speed of collecting floating silver strands was much faster than expected. It had only been a night, and it had already collected about 1/3 of the floating silver strands. Therefore, by this time tomorrow, all the floating silver strands should be collected. Of course, Zhou Luo's contracted lava dragon lizard contributed a lot. After staying at sea for a day, Lin Yuan felt that spirit chi professionals were really very particular about the choice of contracted phase. Sea, land, and sky were the 3 domains. Most phase could only occupy one of them. It was rare for phase to occupy 2 or even a combination of 3. In different environments, different phase would be able to exhibit different strengths. For example, no matter how strong Lu Jie's insect queen's insect swarm was, it could only deal with the enemies at sea. Lu Jie could only rely on the lightning-gathering moths and hurricane owlet moths to attack the surface. As for the enemies under the sea, Lu Jie could only do nothing. Lin Yuan felt that if there was a chance in the future, apart from red thorn source-type life form that could fight in the water, he should also contract a real aquatic fae. He should also form a contract with a true aquatic fae. Reward and update for otaku. Tipping more for otaku. Hee hee. Everyone is welcome to join the group to chat and discuss the plot. Hee hee. Everyone is welcome to join the group to chat and discuss the plot. Also, there will be a reward for guessing the name of Lin Yuan's first sacred source life form. If you answer correctly, you will enter the group and receive an item from Lin Yuan's Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. Seeking recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, rewards, and subscriptions. End of this chapter. Chapter 484. At that moment, Lin Yuan's phone suddenly rang. Upon seeing the caller, Lin Yuan could not help but feel a little surprised. After picking up the phone, Lin Yuan heard the other party speak first before he could speak. I said that I can use any dimensional lifeform's flesh to exchange for water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. I shouldn't be able to do so in the future. The voice from the other end of the phone was very forthright with a hint of apology. Lin Yuan subconsciously replied, "It doesn't matter if you can't use any dimensional lifeform's flesh. It's fine if you can't use the flesh of any dimensional creatures. I have a lot of abyss dimensional creatures' flesh here." The middle-aged man on the other end of the line understood that Lin Yuan had misunderstood and quickly replied, "We use the flesh of water world dimensional creatures to exchange for the flesh of demon dimensional creatures, but that's because it's easier to sell the demon dimensional creatures' flesh into spirit materials. Now, our boss has found a way to exchange the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh for some basic supplies. So I'll have to break the exchange conditions I promised you before." Lin Yuan's brows immediately twitched wildly. He had finally found a way to exchange for water world dimensional lifeform's flesh, so he could not just break it like this. Not to mention letting Red Thorn evolve the ability to breathe underwater. Just the mouth of Relinquish could operate at full strength and produce the eyes of Relinquish to nurture the blood brew grapevine. It needed to consume the flesh of hundreds of gold water world dimensional lifeforms every day. Those that had been exchanged previously were only enough for Red Thorn's mouth of Relinquish to operate at full strength for about a month. As Red Thorn became stronger, it would be matched with the acid secreted by the tongue of Relinquish that specialized in digesting water world dimensional lifeforms. Lin Yuan's demand for the gold water world dimensional lifeform's flesh was on a higher level. If the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh was gone, how could Lin Yuan bear it? Since the middle-aged man on the other end of the conversation was an Indigo Azure Guard, then the leader he mentioned must be the Indigo Azure Guard captain. Lin Yuan wondered if it was the one who had come to the deserted island with the 2 guard envoys yesterday. Since the Indigo Azure Guard captain wanted to exchange for basic supplies, Lin Yuan could also take out basic supplies. In fact, in addition to basic supplies, it was to be able to exchange for gold water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. Even if Lin Yuan had to take out some relatively precious supplies, he would be willing. As long as he could keep using the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh for consumption, it would be equivalent to doing the most economical thing. "Uncle, I can take out more than just basic supplies. I can also take out high-quality materials and some rare spiritual materials to exchange for the flesh and blood of the water world dimensional lifeforms." As he spoke, he had some doubts. He needed the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh to be used as rations for Red Thorn. Why would others need something as smelly as the flesh of water world dimensional creatures? While Lin Yuan was puzzled, he didn't know that the middle-aged man on the other end of the line was even more puzzled. What was wrong with this world? There were actually people willing to take out high-quality resources and rare spiritual materials to exchange for the flesh of gold water world dimensional lifeforms. The rich really knew how to play. One had to know that their boss had found a channel to exchange the flesh and blood of dimensional creatures from the water world for basic supplies. To the Indigo Azure Guards, it was like celebrating the new year. One had to know that the Indigo Azure Guards would usually throw away countless pieces of water world dimensional creature flesh every year. The middle-aged man didn't feel that it was a waste to discard the water world dimensional creature's flesh and blood. But now that he thought about it, his heart ached. Lin Yuan soon heard the middle-aged man on the other end of the phone say straightforwardly, "But if you want to reach a long-term cooperation, you can't buy as little as before." But if you want to reach a long-term cooperation, you can't buy as little as before. Why did he suddenly feel like he was holding a precious bargaining chip now that he was holding the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh, and could start negotiating conditions? Now that I'm holding the flesh and blood of the water world dimensional creature, why do I suddenly feel like I'm holding a precious bargaining chip? I can begin negotiating conditions? In the future, every time I make an exchange, I'll use a diamond face storage box as a unit. As for the price, we'll still follow the previous price, but I'll convert the price of the demon flesh according to the selling price on StarWeb. The converted price of high-quality materials and rare spiritual materials will also be based on StarWeb's price. "Uncle, do you think it's okay?" Based on the middle-aged man's words, the reason he had cancelled the previous transaction agreement was because of the price of the demon flesh and blood. The converted price of high-quality materials and rare spiritual materials will also be based on Star Web's price. What do you think, Uncle? The main reason he had cancelled the previous transaction agreement was the loss of value after exchanging the demon flesh and blood with the water world dimensional life forms. In addition to the loss of value, it would also take a lot of time to disassemble the demon flesh and blood in the abyss dimensional life forms. Now he was willing to use high-quality materials and rare spiritual materials to exchange. It was equivalent to helping the middle-aged man offset the price difference in the middle, which he should be willing to do. In Lin Yuan's opinion, converting everything according to the Star Web price was a more cost-effective price for the middle-aged man. After all, the price of demon flesh and blood on Star Web was about 10% to 20% more expensive than its actual value. Sure enough, after Lin Yuan finished speaking, he immediately heard the middle-aged man's hearty laughter. "Young brother is very particular." Lin Yuan could not help but feel embarrassed when he heard how the middle-aged man addressed him. Previously, he had been calling him uncle, but now that the middle-aged man called him young brother, Lin Yuan could no longer call him uncle. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the middle-aged man speak again. "Young brother, the active period of the dimensional rift is about to begin, and will last for nearly half a year. Therefore, I can't provide any more transactions during this period. The next time I can provide a transaction should be half a year later. If you need a lot of water world dimensional life forms flesh and blood, it's best to complete the transaction with me before tomorrow. Otherwise, our boss may clear out all the dimensional life forms flesh and blood in exchange for some ordinary materials that can improve the phase diet." Lin Yuan immediately expressed his agreement after hearing the middle-aged man's words. "Then I might as well go to Indigo Azure City to find you now. It just so happens that I have an empty diamond face storage box here. I can fill it up during the transaction." After agreeing on a location with the middle-aged man, Lin Yuan hung up the phone. At that moment, a rather serious voice suddenly came from behind the middle-aged man, whose face was smiling like an old chrysanthemum. "Kid, why are you smiling so wretchedly? I've been listening to you laughing for a minute at the door. Why? Have you found a girlfriend since you were single?" Chapter 6. More tips for otaku. End of this chapter. Chapter 485. When the middle-aged man heard that, his face immediately wrinkled. "Guard captain, shouldn't you assign me a girlfriend since I'm so hardworking?" The Indigo Azure Guard captain was the man in blue armor that Lin Yuan had seen on the deserted island that day. When the Indigo Azure Guard captain heard the middle-aged man's words, he immediately slapped his shoulder and scolded jokingly. "Little brat, I've been single for 5 more years than your mother did, and I'm still single. You still want me to assign you a wife? Hurry up. Kid, don't talk nonsense. Come with me to sell all the water world dimensional life forms flesh we've stored." When the middle-aged man heard that, he reached out to grab his buzz cut and said with a sneaky smile, "Guard captain, I seem to have negotiated a big deal." "Guard captain, I seem to have negotiated a huge deal. Half of the gold water world dimensional creature's flesh can't be used to exchange for ordinary supplies." When the Indigo Azure Guard captain heard that, he went up and gave the middle-aged man a kick. "If you have something to say it quickly. I've been busy these 2 days and haven't had any sleep at all. I'm not in the mood to see you show off." After being kicked, the middle-aged man hurriedly told the Indigo Azure Guard captain about the deal he had just made with Lin Yuan on the phone. The Indigo Azure Guard captain frowned slightly. It was not that such a deal was bad, but it was too good. It was so good that it was somewhat unreal. If this deal could be reached, then they could exchange for basic supplies. The Indigo Azure Guard would be exchanging all the water world dimensional life forms flesh for a large number of basic supplies, premium supplies, and rare spiritual ingredients before the dimensional rift arrived. However, such a good deal had to be properly investigated before the transaction. The Indigo Azure Guard captain had originally come to find the middle-aged man to trade the water world dimensional life forms flesh. Now that there was an additional buyer, it was just on the way. If there were rare spiritual ingredients and premium supplies to be exchanged, as long as one was not a fool, they would naturally exchange with rare spiritual ingredients and premium supplies first. How much of the gold water world dimensional lifeform's flesh does he want? When the middle-aged man heard that, he immediately answered with a grin. He said he wants to exchange for a diamond face storage box. When the Indigo Azure Guard captain heard that, he became even more surprised and could not help but fall into deep thought. When he came back to his senses and saw that the middle-aged man was still standing there, he immediately coughed and said, "Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and get ready." In addition to the agreed gold water world dimensional lifeform flesh in the diamond face storage box, prepare some more. The middle-aged man immediately responded, then hurriedly went to prepare. At this moment, the Indigo Azure Guard captain was secretly planning to take a good look when the time came. What kind of exquisite resources and rare spiritual ingredients would the other party use to exchange for the gold water world dimensional lifeform's flesh in the diamond face storage box? There were far too many fine materials and rare spirit materials. Some items that were in high demand would be snatched up crazily as soon as they appeared. However, if he encountered something that had a price but no supply, it would be the same as piling it up in his hands. If that was the case, it would be better to exchange for daily necessities. After hanging up, he told everyone that he was going to Indigo Azure City to trade. Upon hearing that, Endless Summer let the Mother of Bloodbath continue to split the spiritual ingredients on Nightmare VI's body. Endless Summer turned into an abnormally exquisite pink-purple hydrangea-shaped flower, and landed on the completely jade-textured rice bead at the hem of Lin Yuan's white spirit chi clothes. It made Lin Yuan's moon-white spirit chi clothes more vibrant and vivid. Obviously, Endless Summer planned to accompany Lin Yuan to Indigo Azure City at this time to deal with the Zheng family's possible revenge. Lin Yuan also understood Endless Summer's intention. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, the Zheng family probably had no intention of revenge at this time. Even as a veteran faction, the Zheng family's loss of 2 Emperor-class experts was enough to be considered a serious blow. In addition, the 2 Spirit Guards envoys had also come to Indigo Azure City, and the Zheng family had just lost manpower. At this time he would have to guard against Indigo Azure City, and the other 2 veteran forces of the Zheng family, and the other 3 families, who would kick him when he was down. The loss of 2 Emperor-class experts might not be enough to destroy the original situation of the 3 factions. However, it would make the Zheng family the weaker party. This time, the Mother of Bloodbath did not fight with Endless Summer for the opportunity to go to Indigo Azure City with Lin Yuan. Although the Mother of Bloodbath was Lin Yuan's path protector, in terms of strength, the current Endless Summer was indeed stronger. The Mother of Bloodbath had been injured before, but it didn't look like it was injured on the surface. Although outsiders could not see the injury on the surface, it still needed some time to recuperate. During the day, Wuxia, Listen, and Zhou Luo had already gone to the sea to help the ethereal jellyfish collect floating silver threads. The ethereal jellyfish had found the floating silver threads. However, the ethereal jellyfish was unable to use its tentacles to gather and store the floating silver silk thread. Under Zhou Luo's dumbfounded gaze, Wuxia and Listen began a new round of written tests. However, Zhou Luo did not understand why someone would use something so bitter as a bet. Would eating the platinum bitter gourd's flesh really not kill me? Lin Yuan thought about Indigo Azure City along the way. When he arrived at the agreed restaurant, Lin Yuan realized that the middle-aged man he had agreed to meet had not arrived yet. He sat at the side and looked at the scenery in the store. The store's business was very good. It was only morning, but there were already many customers ordering iced drinks, fruit plates, and baked cookies. Lin Yuan only ordered a cup of freshly squeezed watermelon juice and waited for the middle-aged man to arrive. He started to organize the pine ball-shaped diamond face storage box that he had obtained from Jian Hanzhong. The leaf-shaped diamond face storage box originally had plenty of high-grade dimensional lifeforms flesh, and some phase that he had harvested from the depths of the endless forest. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned to empty Jian Hanzhong's pine ball-shaped diamond face storage box. It was used to store the Goldwater World Dimensional Lifeform's flesh in the diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan had not checked Jian Hanzhong's pine ball-shaped diamond face storage box before. Now that he checked, Lin Yuan realized that Jian Hanzhong had not hoarded many resources. Most of the resources must have been spent on the cold snow pine. However, Lin Yuan quickly realized that he had thought wrong. Jian Hanzhong was really an elegant person. The diamond face storage box had always been used to store resources, but Jian Hanzhong had forcefully created the feeling of Morbius Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. It did not have the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone's function. However, within the range of the diamond face storage box, Jian Hanzhong had made it look like a small garden. 7th update. Tipping and updating for the house. End of this chapter. Chapter 486. There were hundreds of rare plants that had obviously been carefully pruned. Their branches and leaves were trimmed, and they were cultivated with great care. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check, and found that many of the plants were very rare. However, most of them did not have any special functions. They were all supreme-grade plants that relied on their looks to make a living. Among them, 12 platinum vines green goat roses had already produced flower buds. The blue goat rose was a famous species of roses. A platinum/epic blue goat rose like this could be sold for nearly 10 million radiance dollars. As long as there was a wall, it did not matter how high it was. The Qingyang rose could grow along the wall and spread out on one side of the wall, forming a beautiful flower wall. The bowl-sized green double-petaled flowers could emit a fragrance that repelled mosquitoes and flies, but could attract butterflies. Jiao Hanzhong had really put in a lot of effort to collect these plants. Supreme-grade plants were not things that could be bought with money. With so many of them gathered here, it would be impossible to collect them without a few decades. In the return from faraway manor, Hu Quan, who had become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, had already started to find a team of architects to start building the Dome Guild Club's base. The supreme-grade plants in Jiao Hanzhong's diamond face storage box could be used to decorate the Guild Club's base. At the same time, he could also build a small garden outside the 3,000-meter bamboo forest in the manor. He could then cultivate all of these supreme-grade plants in the garden. Lin Yuan continued to check the resources in Jiao Hanzhong's diamond face storage box, and found that Jiao Hanzhong had stored a total of 50 source-type items in one box. This should be what Jiao Hanzhong had left after nurturing the cold snow pine, and so many other supreme-grade plants. Then Lin Yuan collected some spiritual ingredients that he felt were valuable, and could not easily buy in the market. Lin Yuan planned to use the remaining resources in Jiao Hanzhong's diamond face storage box to exchange for the gold water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. Lin Yuan only had time to drink the iced watermelon juice, after tidying up Jiao Hanzhong's diamond face storage box. Just as he drank a few mouthfuls of the iced watermelon juice, Lin Yuan saw the middle-aged man he had arranged to meet walking toward him. The middle-aged man had obviously noticed Lin Yuan's presence, and was waving at him. Lin Yuan hurriedly got up and waved at the middle-aged man. After standing up, Lin Yuan realized that the middle-aged man was accompanied by someone he had seen before. It was the Indigo Azure Guard captain who had gone to the deserted island. Lin Yuan also waved at the Indigo Azure Guard captain. The Indigo Azure Guard captain was rather surprised to see Lin Yuan. He did not expect that this youth, who seemed to know the two guard envoys, but did not seem to know them, was actually the target of this transaction. Lin Yuan handed the pineball-shaped diamond face storage box to the middle-aged man sitting opposite him who had just ordered the peanuts and ice flowers. Take a look at the things inside. Can you exchange them for a diamond face storage box and a gold water world dimensional lifeform's flesh? Lin Yuan had already sorted out the resources here. In addition to the ones he had taken out, he had replenished 200 pots of silver/elite usnias after realizing that they were not enough. Lin Yuan had carefully calculated the value, and it would only be more or less. Of course, even if it was more, it would only be a little bit more. After the middle-aged man took a look, the peanuts and ice flowers that the waiter had just served fell out of his mouth. The Indigo Azure Guard captain frowned. This kid had a slip of the tongue, and even wanted me to introduce a partner. Isn't this a scam? Immediately after, the middle-aged man handed the pineball-shaped diamond face storage box to the Indigo Azure Guard captain. The indigo azure guard captain picked it up and felt that it was fortunate that he had not eaten the ice flowers. Otherwise, even if it did not fall out of his mouth, he would definitely choke. After carefully looking through it, the indigo azure guard captain knew that the resources inside were definitely enough. Moreover, there were silver usnias, which could produce silver usnia vines continuously. It was definitely worth the money, although there were also some items that were relatively difficult to sell. As long as silver usnias appeared in the market, they would be immediately snatched up by people. Hence, they were calculated according to the star web price. This was enough to show the sincerity of the youth wearing the strange mask. The indigo azure guard captain simply asked the middle-aged man to fill the pineball-shaped diamond face storage box. Then, he took out the extra platinum face storage box and the gold dimensional lifeform's flesh and handed it to Lin Yuan. He said, "I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation again in the future." Lin Yuan did not reject the extra platinum water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. Just like how the middle-aged man and the indigo azure guard captain did not reject Lin Yuan's additional premium resources and rare spiritual ingredients. After this transaction, Lin Yuan was finally at ease. He would no longer need to worry about the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. At the same time, it was equivalent to Lin Yuan saving a large sum of money that even he would feel the pinch of spending. Along the way, there were no accidents. Lin Yuan and Endless Summer once again returned to the deserted island. The mother of Bloodbath had more or less split the dream-eating bat. When the mother of Bloodbath saw Lin Yuan return, it handed over all the resources it had split from the cold snow pine and the dream-eating bat. "Look at my skills. Isn't it a lot better than when I split that old crow?" Lin Yuan looked at the various spiritual ingredients that had been dissected so carefully and stored in crystal bottles according to their categories. He quickly gave the mother of Bloodbath a thumbs up. The mother of Bloodbath could be called the butcher's splitting hand, ruthless bone crusher, and tidying up little expert. The mother of Bloodbath accepted Lin Yuan's compliment with confidence. It stretched and took out its cell phone, waved it in front of Lin Yuan and said, "My cell phone is out of battery." "My phone is out of battery, lend me your phone. I want to share the Teppan seafood barbecue that I posted in my moments with the members of the food group." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan's brows twitched wildly as he handed over his cell phone. As the mother of Bloodbath continued to share Lujia's delicacies in the few food group exchanges, the mother of Bloodbath had been in. It had become the mysterious chef worshipper fellowship. However, only those who had tasted Lujia's delicacies would understand the bliss of being able to taste Lujia's delicacies. Ever since Lujia's cooking had made him a picky eater, Lin Yuan no longer had that amazing feeling even when he went to the Spirit Food Pavilion to eat. In fact, Lin Yuan even felt that Lujia's cooking was more delicious. 8th update. Tipping for otaku. There were some problems with the settings of the elemental shellfish. Woo woo woo. I'm going to change it tonight. Thank you for pointing it out to me. Let's start with the 8th update today and make up for the rest. Button will continue to work hard. End of this chapter. Chapter 487. After handing the cell phone to the mother of Bloodbath, Lin Yuan dived into the sea again. He saw Listen, Lujia, and Zhou Luo each wearing a gold-green oxygen sea anemone on their mouths. They were constantly rolling the floating silver threads that the ethereal jellyfish had found on the seabed into a ball. Just as Lin Yuan was about to help, Zhou Luo handed him several bundles of floating silver threads and pointed at the sea surface. Lin Yuan understood and floated up with Zhou Luo. Zhou Luo handed the bundles of floating silver threads to Lin Yuan and said, "Young master, we have a total of 47 bundles now." "Young master, we now have a total of 47 groups. Each group of floating silver threads is at least 1,000 meters long." Lin Yuan took the bundles of floating silver threads and could not help but sigh. Just these floating silver threads were already a considerable amount of wealth. Apart from being used to shield spatial fluctuations, the floating silver was also used to make fey carriages. A large portion of it would also be used to make fey carriages or mixed in the walls of buildings to shield from detection. These floating silver threads should be quite useful in Hu Quan's hands after he brought them back. Seeing Lin Yuan take the bundles of floating silver threads, Zhou Luo's expression was a little complicated. "Young master, go to the island. You don't have to go into the sea. The three of us can completely keep up with young master's spatial phase speed in finding the floating silver. I often have no work to do." Lin Yuan listened to Zhou Luo's words and looked at Zhou Luo's expression. He immediately wondered if Lu Jie and Listen had started some strange competition again. Since he could not help much in the sea, Lin Yuan simply returned to the island. He let Lu Jie's insect queen produce a hurricane owlet moth to blow dry his clothes before returning to the tent. He was prepared to enter the spirit lock spatial zone again to see the changes that had occurred after the source sand absorbed the mountain-containing embryo after such a long time. Zhou Luo watched Lin Yuan go ashore before diving into the sea again. The more he interacted with Lin Yuan, the more Zhou Luo could find that Lin Yuan was different from the other young masters of the major factions. Lin Yuan did not have that kind of domineering arrogance. Zhou Luo could clearly feel Lin Yuan's equal and intimate attitude toward him and others. When he returned to the Spirit Lock spatial zone again, he suddenly realized that there was a very fragrant scent in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. He was very familiar with this smell. This smell was very similar to the smell of the silver stamen gold luster cassia flowers at the entrance of the Radiant Moon Palace. It was just that the fragrance was a little stronger than the silver stamen gold luster cassia. At the same time, in this rich fragrance, there was a trace of bitterness that was hard to detect. When he had been enhancing gray yesterday, he had discovered that the cinnabar sweet osmanthus, whose tree core had been dug out half a year ago, had vaguely grown flower buds that were not even the size of rice grains among the green leaves. However, Lin Yuan had been focused on gray yesterday, and had not paid attention to the changes in the cinnabar sweet osmanthus. When he thought about it carefully, he remembered that although the cinnabar sweet osmanthus had recovered from its injuries, it did not seem to have produced flower buds. But now, the cinnabar sweet osmanthus had actually bloomed a tree full of vermilion flowers that bent the branches. The flowers were so dense that they almost completely covered the green leaves. Looking from afar, the cinnabar sweet osmanthus would occasionally drop the most flourishing flowers. The flowers bloomed, but the flowers were already withered. The most flourishing flowers sprinkled on the pure white pure land of bliss. It was like a misty rain in April, with a breathtaking and gentle beauty. Come to think of it, when the pure land of bliss had been absorbing the world grace yesterday, the cinnabar sweet osmanthus had also obtained a lot of benefits from the pure land of bliss. Since the cinnabar sweet osmanthus had obtained benefits from the pure land of bliss, what about the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree? Immediately after, Lin Yuan took a closer look at the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree beside the cinnabar sweet osmanthus, and found that a new branch had grown from Chinese bird nest. Although the branch didn't make Chinese nest bigger, it made the nest look more luxuriant than it had expected. Lin Yuan could vaguely feel that the speed at which the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree conducted the golden energy toward the bird nest seemed to be slightly faster than before. However, this increase was not very obvious if one did not observe it carefully. The wind speed rapid antelope, which Lin Yuan had appointed as the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone's housekeeper, was constantly manipulating the wind elements to form a cyclone. He diligently collected the cinnabar-colored flower petals that fell on the pure land of bliss. Upon sensing that Lin Yuan had entered the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, the wind speed rapid antelope quickly ran toward Lin Yuan. It hopped twice in front of Lin Yuan, and was abnormally friendly. The wind speed rapid antelope's feelings for Lin Yuan were different from the other phase that Lin Yuan had nurtured but not contracted. When the wind speed rapid antelope was on the brink of death, it could only watch as Lin Yuan saved it like a god of salvation. And to live in such a nice place. Therefore, to a certain extent, the wind speed rapid antelope's gratitude and closeness to Lin Yuan was already comparable to Chimey and Genius' closeness to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan rubbed the wind speed rapid antelope's little head. At that moment, he looked at the 7 bronze/legend elemental shellfish that he had placed in different locations in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. Apart from the ones that the floating island whale and the twin red pagoda had absorbed, the elemental pearls produced by the elemental shellfish had all disappeared. The wind speed rapid antelope had neatly gathered them together. Upon seeing that, Lin Yuan walked over and took out a heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl produced by the Celestine elemental shellfish and handed it to the wind-speed rapid antelope. Previously, Lin Yuan had never thought of nurturing the wind-speed rapid antelope, so he had never poured any resources into it. Now that Lin Yuan had decided to nurture the wind-speed rapid antelope, he would not be stingy even though its foundation was not good. The cinnabar sweet osmanthus's flowers were an excellent thing. The cinnabar sweet osmanthus's flowers could refresh the mind, clear toxins, and suppress mental toxins to a certain extent. It was not like the silver stamen gold luster osmanthus's flowers that could cleanse the marrow and make the human genetic model more perfect. However, the cinnabar sweet osmanthus's flowers had such effects, and it was also an excellent choice as an ingredient. Afterward, the maple syrup that everyone ate in the mansion could be replaced with the cinnabar sweet osmanthus's nectar. Lin Yuan could feel the wind-speed rapid antelope's thoughtfulness. The wind-speed rapid antelope was a fae that could manipulate elemental energy with spiritual mutation. It could naturally sense the pure and abundant wind elemental energy in the pearl that Lin Yuan had handed to it. The wind-speed rapid antelope carefully cupped Lin Yuan's hand, lowered its head, and shook its neck. First update. Seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. There will be more tonight, but it will be later. End of this chapter. Chapter 488. The wind-speed rapid antelope's action seemed to be hinting for Lin Yuan to help it hang the wind elemental heavenly maiden-grade pearl around its neck. Lin Yuan smiled and crushed the wind elemental heavenly maiden-grade pearl, indicating for the wind-speed rapid antelope to eat it. The wind-speed rapid antelope's current intelligence was just like the clingy pets that people raised in his previous life. Even if you make some movements, he will be able to understand the meaning behind your movements. However, if he were to use language to communicate with the wind-speed rapid antelope, it wouldn't be able to understand. However, Lin Yuan still spoke softly to the wind-speed rapid antelope, just like how he spoke to Genius and Chimey. Little fella, with your body's current condition, you can consume an elemental pearl approximately every 3 days. From now on, I will feed you one every 3 days. The wind-speed rapid antelope saw that Lin Yuan had crushed the good stuff and handed it to it. She didn't understand why Lin Yuan was so wasteful to let her eat such a good thing. However, the wind-speed rapid antelope still happily licked all the elemental pearl powder in Lin Yuan's palm clean. Lin Yuan shook his head helplessly. Is this little fellow afraid of wasting the elemental pearl powder? Or is it washing its hands for me? This was simply too clean. Since the wind-speed rapid antelope was innately weak, it did not receive proper nurturing when it was young. Therefore, he decided to rely on the acquired resources to push the wind-speed rapid antelope up. To the current Lin Yuan, priceless treasures were easy to obtain. However, the wind-speed rapid antelope was considerate and sensible. It relied on its instincts to tidy up the spirit lock spatial zone in an orderly manner. If he were to miss this opportunity, it would be difficult to find another one. Even if he could meet again, he would never be fated with this little fellow in front of him. With the pleasant surprise of the cinnabar sweet osmanthus blooming, Lin Yuan went closer to take a look at the cinnabar osmanthus haworthia parasitizing the cinnabar sweet osmanthus. With a glance, Lin Yuan realized that the cinnabar osmanthus haworthia had now become gold X from gold 8. A long thin tassel grew out of it. Upon seeing this fine tassel, Lin Yuan knew that it was a sign that the cinnabar osmanthus haworthia was about to bear fruit. Lin Yuan was looking forward to the cinnabar osmanthus haworthia bearing fruit. Once the cinnabar osmanthus haworthia's fruit matured, it would strengthen his spiritual energy, which he had not dared to use easily. Although it was not much of an enhancement, it would allow him to choose a fae without having to be so strapped for spiritual energy. You can also have more choices. After arranging everything, Lin Yuan let the source sand at the cuff of his sleeve turn into the form of gravel. With this look, he found that the mountain-containing embryo was indeed smaller than before. However, the source sand's quality remained the same. It hadn't been upgraded from Fantasy I to Fantasy II. However, Lin Yuan could clearly sense that the source sand had undergone tremendous changes. Previously, if the source sand's gravel had been separated, It would only be the pile of gravel that the source sand had transformed into and the gravel that the source sand had produced by creating sand underground. But now, other than the ball of sand that the source sand had transformed into and the grains of sand that it had produced, the source sand didn't seem to be able to move at all. Lin Yuan felt that the source sand was now able to produce a type of extremely dense gravel. Although Lin Yuan's control over the high-density gravel was not as good as the source sand's own gravel, it was far superior to the source sand's mass production of gravel. Although there was not a lot of gravel, it could completely cover everything within 3 meters of Lin Yuan. This undoubtedly brought Lin Yuan a great surprise. The reason for such a change was because the source sand had absorbed the mountain-containing embryo's evolution ability. Lin Yuan planned to name the Midland dense gravel the guard gravel. Due to the gravel's existence, Lin Yuan's close-range defense and close-range attack abilities were greatly enhanced. At that moment, Lin Yuan truly felt how terrifying it was to nurture a Fae with superior resources, and how terrifying the Fae's enhancement could be. Lin Yuan was also very glad that he hadn't made do with spiritual ingredients that could be substituted in order to improve his fantasy breed Fae's quality. Lin Yuan took an Earth Elemental Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearl produced by the thick Earth Elemental Shellfish, and threw it into the source sand. The source sand immediately transported this Earth Elemental Heavenly Maiden Grade Pearl to the side of the mountain-containing embryo. Then it rotated the gravel, causing the Earth Elemental Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearl and the mountain-containing embryo to collide. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that his elemental source-type source sand's soul essence wouldn't be that of an old man, right? When it was only a gold/fantasy breed, it already knew to rotate the pearl with its chaotic intelligence. What would happen when it matured? Lin Yuan had never given the source sand a name. Now he felt that since the source sand liked to rotate the pearl so much, why not call it source sand string? Lin Yuan wanted to use the Earth Elemental Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls produced by the thick Earth Elemental Shellfish to temper the source sand's elemental body. The sand element was a variant of the earth element, and they had the same origin. Since the source sand was an elemental source-type life form, it would be extremely beneficial for it to be tempered by such pure earth elements. It could also help the source sand increase its grade. After sensing the source sand's absorption speed, Lin Yuan knew that if this continued, the source sand would be able to consume 2 Earth Elemental Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls every day. After accumulating for a long time, it would consume 60 pearls in a month, and 720 pearls in a year. How many people could afford this kind of consumption? Even if they could afford it, how many people would be willing to invest so many resources for their fays? Nurturing a fae was a process of using resources to roll a snowball. Although the investment and return might not be proportional, it was impossible to make the fae stronger during the evolution process without any investment. It was obviously an extremely unrealistic thing. This was also the reason why a person with a stronger foundation would be able to nurture a stronger fae, excluding their own talents. However, Lin Yuan was very willing to spend the resources to nurture fays. Morbius was Lin Yuan's contracted fae, and its exclusive skill, Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, gave Lin Yuan the confidence to carry out such consumption. The number of Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls consumed by the source sand was just a drop in the ocean compared to the number produced by the thick Earth Elemental Shellfish. Lin Yuan started to enhance the silver usnias in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. This Spirit Chi professional couldn't rely on absorbing the Spirit Chi in the world, and could only rely on the Spirit Chi from the enhanced Fae to increase their grade. It was simply too difficult. As soon as Lin Yuan exited the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, he immediately sensed the ethereal jellyfish's spiritual wave. Lin Yuan's pupils constricted. Lin Yuan knew that the secret hidden in this nearshore sea could finally be completely revealed at this moment. Second update, seeking recommendation votes and monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 489. When Lin Yuan got out of the tent, he saw Listen sitting there with wet clothes and constantly stuffing dry rations into his mouth. Obviously, Listen had exhausted his stamina while collecting the floating silver threads under the sea. It seemed that the winner between Listen and Lu Jie was clear at a glance. Lin Yuan walked to Lisan's side, took out a bag of fresh fruits from the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box, handed it to Lisan and he then asked, "What did you and Big Brother Lu bet on this time?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Lisan answered with a bitter face, "It's the pulp of the platinum bitter melon. I originally only bet on this, but I added a condition of not drinking water for 3 hours after eating the bitter melon pulp." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan reached out and patted Lisan's shoulder with a face full of sympathy. It was fine to eat the platinum bitter melon pulp, but it was just to experience the feeling of being so bitter that it made one want to die. If one drank a few cups of sweet fruit juice or nectar brewed from the cinnabar sweet osmanthus immediately after eating it, that extreme bitterness that made one want to die would be quickly eliminated. However, not drinking water for 3 hours after eating was too much. What kind of godly condition was this? What was the difference between this and a girlfriend asking to play for 3 days and 3 nights? That extreme bitterness did not need anything to be suppressed, and it simply could not be dispersed. Wasn't this the same as having to experience the feeling of being bitter for 3 hours in a row? Even if Lin Yuan had experienced the bitterness of life, he did not dare to imagine what it was like. Lin Yuan saw the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer each holding a mobile phone and fiddling with it. The two suzerain/myth breed phase had already displayed the realm of hands never leaving the mobile phone to the extreme. However, the mother of Bloodbath was using its mobile phone to share Lu Jie's food in the food group, attracting a group of praises. As for Endless Summer, people were frantically recommending all kinds of accessories in various accessories exchange groups. In this regard, Lin Yuan felt that it was simply great. As long as Endless Summer did not dye her hair, anything was good. When the mother of Bloodbath saw Lin Yuan leave the tent, its mouth twitched. Was there anyone more of a homebody than Lin Yuan in this world? It was not easy to come to the sea, but he did not come out to see the scenery and enjoy the sea breeze. All the people on Star Web were fat homebodies. However, the thin otaku drank less cola than the fat otaku. What was the difference between a skinny otaku and a fat otaku? The mother of Bloodbath stood up and was about to call Lin Yuan to move around on this deserted island, and then go a little farther into the sea to catch some sea crabs. At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath saw Lin Yuan jump into the sea. Thus, the mother of Bloodbath could only sit down again and continue playing with her phone. But this time, the mother of Bloodbath did not chat in the gourmet group. Instead, he opened the search engine and searched. What's with the skinny otaku suddenly liking sports and taking the initiative to swim? The answer at the top of the list read frowny-faced. The skinny otaku must have gone underwater to look at the beauties. How dare someone ask such a stupid question? Eat some retarded pills to nourish yourself. Just as the mother of Bloodbath was about to get angry, it immediately thought of the words looking at beauties. Naturally, Lu Jie and Zhou Luo were not beauties. However, their appearances were also quite outstanding. If that's the case, what's with the skinny otaku going to the sea to look at handsome guys? The mother of Bloodbath suddenly felt that the human world was really difficult to understand. Male spiders were easier to understand. It was just that male spiders did not know how to cook. Pass. When Lin Yuan reached the sea, he saw Lu Jie standing on the seabed and constantly entangling the floating silver thread. Meanwhile, Zhou Luo was commanding the lava dragon lizard to constantly use its body to hit a seabed mound that was obviously several times harder than the other seabed rocks. When Lin Yuan got close, he saw that the lava dragon lizard's impact on the seabed mound was not obvious. He immediately summoned Red Thorn and let Red Thorn's Ortet spawn a large patch of nibbling vines under the sea. The nibbling vines started to nibble at the seabed mound through the sharp teeth on the vines. Half an hour later, the nibbling vines gnawed out many holes and the lava dragon lizard kept hitting it. The seabed that was holding down the last floating silver thread was directly broken by the impact. Just as Lu Jie pulled out the last floating silver thread, the space in the sea suddenly trembled violently. During the trembling, a huge hole tore open in the space. The huge hole sucked Lin Yuan, Lu Jie, Zhou Luo, as well as Red Thorn and the lava dragon lizard, which were close to Lin Yuan, into the open portal. Immediately after, this open door lost the spatial magnetic ore's first layer of protection, and the floating silver thread's second layer of concealment. After sucking Lin Yuan and the others in, it broke through the sea surface and formed a huge dimensional rift. Immediately after, something seemed to have happened inside the massive dimensional rift, causing it to tremble all of a sudden. A layer of violent spatial energy gushed out of the huge black and red rift. This layer of violent spatial energy seemed to be trying to pull, wanting to tear the already open dimensional rift's entrance even bigger. The moment the dimensional rift suddenly appeared and Lin Yuan and the others' auras disappeared, the mother of Bloodbath flashed and arrived at the seabed where Lin Yuan, Lu Jie, and Zhou Luo had disappeared. The mother of Bloodbath saw the ethereal jellyfish using its soft tentacles to fiddle with the space. It wanted to drill into this dimensional rift that seemed to have a layer of restriction. However, the moment the ethereal jellyfish's soft tentacles touched the dimensional rift's restriction, they were sliced into pieces by the dimensional rift. However, the ethereal jellyfish did not seem to feel any pain, and desperately tried to squeeze its body in. Upon seeing this, the mother of Bloodbath stopped the ethereal jellyfish, and immediately activated the blood law that it controlled. However, the condensed blood energy in its hand did not swing down on this dimensional rift that seemed to have a layer of restriction. Endless Summer said with an abnormally ugly expression, "How can there be a controlled Pinnacle Class 3 Water World dimensional rift here? What happened inside the Water World dimensional rift's biological space? It's actually raising the dimensional rift's grade." The mother of Bloodbath's usually expressionless face seemed to reveal a trace of panic and endless self-blame for the first time in its life. The mother of Bloodbath hugged the ethereal jellyfish tightly in its arms. Its mind unconsciously thought of how that youth had gone all out under the earth cleansing. He had allowed it to pass through the Myth 2 earth cleansing and transform into a human form. It was clearly Lin Yuan's path protector, but in a dangerous situation, it had lost the vigilance that a path protector should have. When it went out, it should always follow Lin Yuan closely and go into the sea with him. If it could go into the sea with Lin Yuan, then when this dimensional rift suddenly opened, it would be able to react immediately. Lin Yuan would also not be sucked into this dimensional rift. 166 Reading Network. Chapter 490. When a dimensional rift evolved, it was equivalent to sealing the original dimensional space and forming an independent spatial environment that was constantly tearing and expanding. Even if the mother of Bloodbath used all its strength, it could not tear open the evolving dimensional rift. Even if someone had the ability to tear open this evolving dimensional rift, the mother of Bloodbath would rush up and desperately stop that person. If the dimensional rift was torn open during the evolution process, the spatial energy inside the dimensional rift would be chaotic and collapse. At that time, Lin Yuan would be torn into pieces in the chaotic collapse of the spatial energy, and he was destined to have no chance of survival. The ethereal jellyfish that Lin Yuan had contracted was the only thing that could determine whether Lin Yuan was alive or not. The mother of Bloodbath's self-reproach expression did not diminish, but it suppressed its panic. The mother of Bloodbath soared into the air and returned to the deserted island. It took out the cell phone that it had previously asked Lin Yuan for. As a myth-breed fae, the mother of Bloodbath's hand that was holding Lin Yuan's cell phone was trembling. The mother of Bloodbath had clearly lived for a long time. However, the traces of life left behind in all the previous times were not as many as the traces left behind in this half a year. From the first time they met, scenes flashed in its mind. Never giving up. In the end, its entire life was integrated into the Return from Faraway Manor, which had long been treated by the mother of Bloodbath as its home. Arachnid fays had always been cruel, but once a cruel and cold-blooded arachnid determined something, then it would often be more sincere. The mother of Bloodbath forced itself to stop thinking. It lowered its head and looked at Lin Yuan's cell phone. The mother of Bloodbath took a deep breath and dialed a number on Lin Yuan's cell phone. The mother of Bloodbath understood that it could not do anything now. However, that person might have a way. Leaning Moon Mountain. Gulls and herons circled, and butterflies fluttered. The silver stamen gold luster cassia emitted an elegant osmanthus fragrance that spread in front of the Radiant Moon Palace. Today, the Radiant Moon Palace was a little different from usual. For tea attendants stood at the entrance of the Radiant Moon Palace. Their expressions were abnormally serious, but there was a trace of anticipation in their serious expressions. In the inner palace of the Radiant Moon Palace, Mystic Moon stood by the table, holding a jade pumpkin teapot. She looked at the moon shadow corridor inside the inner palace. At that moment, the pond full of suzerain lotus vase in the rear hall was emitting haze of various colors. This caused the inner palace to look like a fairyland shrouded in multicolored light. There were a few spirit siphon goldfish in the pool, which had been upgraded from platinum to diamond at some point in time. Their peony-like fishtails occasionally popped out of the water. Mystic Moon, Moon, and Mystic Moon. Xianyu's mind was clearly not on the jade pumpkin teapot in her hand. Thus, when Xianyu poured the tea out of the jade pumpkin teapot, she accidentally spilled some on the table. Xianyu hurriedly placed the jade pumpkin teapot on the table and picked up a handkerchief to clean up the spilled water stains. To Mystic too, the Mystic Moon's worried expression, worry, appeared in Mystic Moon. Of Moon. The worry in Xianyu's eyes deepened as she muttered softly, "This is the third time the Moon Empress has attempted to break through that realm in the past few years. Not only did she fail the previous 2 times, but she was also severely injured. This is the third time the Moon Empress is trying to reach that realm in the past few years." At that moment, the Moon Empress' cell phone rang. Mystic Moon did not check it immediately. The Moon Empress' cell phone rarely rang, and it was mostly Lin Yuan. However, due to the Moon Empress' personal suggestion to change the Radiance 100 Sequences test, the Radiance 100 Sequences test had been changed recently. Therefore, the Radiance Sacred Hall had more opportunities to contact the Moon Empress. Mystic Moon was one of the Moon Empress' moon envoys. However, Mystic Moon would not pick up the Moon Empress call. If that was the case, it would be considered as overstepping his boundaries. However, after the ringing stopped, it rang 3 more times in a row. It seemed like there was something urgent. Mystic Moon took a look and found that it was Lin Yuan's cell phone number. Mystic Moon could not help but frown. These 3 consecutive calls were a little urgent. Could it be that Lin Yuan had encountered something urgent? The Moon Empress was in seclusion. If Lin Yuan really had something urgent, Mystic Moon could take care of it. Hence, Mystic Moon picked up the call. However, when Mystic Moon picked up the call, he heard a strange and pleasant female voice coming from the other end. It was not Lin Yuan's voice. However, after hearing the content, Mystic Moon's face turned gloomy. In an instant, a violent spiritual wave spiraled around Mystic Moon's body. Just as this terrifying spiritual pressure appeared, a layer of bright silver patterns appeared on Xianyu's forehead, cheeks, and even her palms, which were covered by the silver robe. At the same time, Mystic Moon's black eyes turned dark silver. Mystic Moon's usually gentle and clear voice was also tainted with a hint of worry and killing intent. "Wait for me to inform the Moon Empress." After saying this, Mystic Moon looked at the moon shadow corridor in the inner palace. Gritting his teeth, Mystic Moon took the cell phone that he had not hung up and walked toward the moon shadow corridor. At that moment, the Moon Empress, who was in the moon shadow corridor's sleeping chamber, suddenly opened her eyes. The moment the Moon Empress opened her eyes, her aura changed drastically compared to before. Previously, the Moon Empress gave off the feeling of a bright moon in the sky that was illuminating the river. She had an unparalleled elegance as though she was born to be at the peak. Now, the Moon Empress' sharpness and nobility were all withdrawn the moment she opened her eyes. The bright moon in the sky that was illuminating the river quietly turned into a wisp of gentle moonlight. The corner of the Moon Empress' mouth revealed a smile. But immediately after, the Moon Empress' brows locked tightly. At that moment, the Moon Empress suddenly could not feel the existence of the extreme token that she had given Lin Yuan. At that moment, the Moon Empress heard Mystic Moon's voice coming from the door. "Moon Empress, I have an important report that concerns His Highness. I have to disturb you." After hearing Mystic Moon's words, the Moon Empress immediately carried the rabbit that was nibbling on the carrot. In a flash, she left the sleeping chamber. When the Moon Empress appeared in front of Mystic Moon, when Mystic Moon sensed the Moon Empress state, He immediately knew that the Moon Empress had actually broken through that boundary. The Moon Empress was now in existence above an S+ spirit chi professional. However, Mystic Moon did not say a word of congratulations at that moment. Instead, he handed the cell phone that he had not hung up to the Moon Empress. When the Moon Empress picked up the phone, her originally cold face immediately turned expressionless and calm. Immediately after, countless experts in the Radiance Federation, including ordinary people, looked up at the sky. This was because the current situation had suddenly changed. It was originally afternoon, and the sun had just started to incline to the west. In just the blink of an eye, the sky had turned from white to dark. The scorching sun also turned into a bright crescent moon. However, the moonlight that was scattered by this bright moon was abnormally cold. 166 Reading Network, that you're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.